Hello, if you want to watch exclusive lemon content on What If Naruto, then go to my Boosty. The first link in the description here contains such hot stories for adults, such as what if Naruto was a daddy for Sarada, or Kushina and Mikoto vulgar Naruto mommies. Follow the link and enjoy. I'm waiting for you.
Description: I will prove to all of you that I will become a Hokage. Team number 7 has dispersed. The landfill is empty. There was only one blonde left on it, without the old smile. After sitting a little more under the tree, I was about to leave. How? Ka. Again, the whole body shivered. He started coughing and choking on blood. It began to get dark in my eyes, the sounds began to be muffled, and a rule flashed through my head. His own and the very first rule. Smart Jinchuriki, dangerous Jinchuriki, stupid Jinchuriki do not pose a threat. There were 4 of us. Her, nor myself. You took tomatoes. A little boy of 5 or 6 pulled the sleeve of his brother's jacket, laying out food on a thin blanket. Of course, but that's it. How could I not take your favorite dish? With these words, the eldest son of the head of the Uchiha clan took out a few tomatoes from the picnic basket and gave them to his younger brother. Having received what he wanted, the boy began to tell about something cheerfully to another brunette sitting to his right, who was a little older, about the boy's nickname. And so Nizan and I come home, and Mom meets us in the kitchen with a pie like this. Speaking, the boy still manipulated his hands, expressing his emotions in this way, and showing how big the pie prepared by his mother was. His interlocutor only occasionally nodded to him, smiled, and sometimes inserted similar phrases into someone else's monologue. Such as, "Aha, great. It is clear, but what happened next," and others. After the boy fell silent and began to eat one of his tomatoes, a recent listener turned to his friend. "Itachi, call Naruto. Something he's quiet down there on the branch and is in no hurry to show himself to us." He smiled warmly as he uttered every word. By the way, Itachi had already finished laying out everything and turned in the direction from where the blonde's chakra was felt. I called the last one, "Naruto, come down to us." There was also a slight, barely noticeable smile on his face, and everyone was like brothers to each other. The named one immediately complied with the request, jumping down from his seat and using Shumshin. He found himself next to 3 representatives of the Uchiha clan. "Sit down, Shisui, Sasuke, move over." Shisui immediately moved a little closer and put the youngest, who was already eating the second tomato, between his knees. Uzumaki, after a little trampling on the spot, sat down on an empty seat and began to mutter something quietly and dissatisfied under his breath. Shisui, noticing this, only laughed. "Naruto, don't worry about it. You're a little younger than Sasuke, and you already know the techniques that graduates of the academy know. And Shunshins are shadow clones, even they don't know them. These techniques are used by Shinobi Wanbu. You don't have to worry so much. I think that you will soon be able to hide your chakra too, as I am fed up." That's right, the guy on the last word turned his head to the left and looked at the guy with the raven-colored hair. "Yes, I think so too. There's no need for you to rush so much, Naruto. You're already way ahead of your peers. Let's forget about training for a while and eat something." Mikoto cooked quite a lot of food. Having said that, Itachi ruffled his hair with a blue eye. Jinchuriki only smiled at this out of the corner of his lips. Together they are a family. The family he never had. But at one point, what have you forgotten here in my house and next to my son?" The voice of Fugaku, who came earlier from work, was as firm as steel, full of anger. Both boys looked with fright at the father of one of them who entered the room. "I ask you again what you forgot here." The head of the Uchiha clan, standing in the doorway, began to slowly walk into the room. "Fugaku, you're going to scare them to death right now. Remember whose son he is. You were friends with him." Mikoto, his wife, tried to reason with her husband and not let him harm the children. "Please leave them alone. I'm going to take him out now, and he won't be seeing our son anymore." Of course, the woman spoke only honestly. A partial truth, because if everything works out, then about their meeting, as well as friendship, she will have nothing against it. "Step back, Mikoto, I don't care whose son he is. That was all in the past. With these words, the man roughly pushed away his wife, who was holding his hand, and approached. Almost right next to the children, he told me not to see you in my house anymore. Rage and contempt were visible in his eyes, but it was not this that scared the boy so much as the fact that 3 tomai swirled in his eyes, which in turn began to change their shape. Mandike Sharingan lit up in the eyes of Sasuke's father. There are 3 of them left. Him, Itachi, and Shisui. Forgive me, Naruto, I'm to blame for what happened. Itachi spoke in an even and guilty voice, but there were notes of anger at his father, as well as an understanding that time was turning. He can't turn back time. Don't worry, it's not your fault. I just didn't have to flirt and pay attention to the arrival of Fugaku. Then I would have had time to escape. The blame is entirely on me, but not on you. The blonde man spoke in a confident and serious tone, certainly not inherent in children of his age. Yes, but still, if I had returned with the mission at least 5 minutes faster, I would have been able to warn you about his arrival. But I did not expect that my father would not go to the night. That's why Sasuke let you sleep over. This one is my fault. Don't even try to deny it. Uzumaki just sighed. Now he really could not deny Itachi's guilt because he was responsible for surveillance and knowledge about the next arrival of the head of the house in the house. Okay, I forgive you, but don't blame yourself for that. After a little silence, Naruto decided to ask the question he was interested in. Why do you think Sasuke's memory has been erased, but I don't? After all, Fugaku should have erased it for both of us. After a little thought, Uchiha replied. Honestly, I don't know. I don't see any point in leaving my father's memory to you, so I can assume that you either have immunity, or this is the effect of the Kyuubi chakra. So let's check it out. Put me in your most powerful genjutsu, or erase the memory, for example, of today. Or not, it was said firmly and decisively. With just one intonation, he put an end to it and showed that he was not going to do any of the above. But why? After all, I said no. Sharingan and his power are not toys for you. You're too young for that. The coldness with which Itachi pronounced it made Naruto shiver a little. But after all, Fugaku, I'm not him, and I'm not going to do this to you. But Itachi, it's just going to be like a little experiment. You're not going to kill me in the process. Everything will be fine. And us. I said no. Now Uchiha opened his previously closed eyes, and they were filled with blood. Literally. A 3-wash Sharingan burned in them, indicating that the brunette is now on the verge of a breakdown, and almost for the first time. Cannot contain his emotions that have accumulated in him. But we just sounded less confident, it was, than before. Naruto. An angry look made the boy guiltily lower his head and shut up. Itachi closed his eyes again and rubbed the bridge of his nose with his thumb and index finger. After that, he said in a soft tone, we don't need to test our theory. It's unlikely you'll have to fight a Sharingan bearer anytime soon. Of course, we can experiment when you grow up, but it will only be when absolutely necessary. Do you understand me? Don't even try to pester Shiso with such requests. I personally warned him about it. Uzumaki only nodded slightly, and Tashi always read him like an open book. Soon everything began to improve. Naruto continued to send clones to the academy and train with the Uchiha, but now without Sasuke. And now the moment has come. Naruto, named, immediately turned to face the brunette. Remember, I told you about the 2 wards of Danza. So, I met one of them. Tomorrow, I want to introduce him to you and Shisui. So come half an hour early. All right. Of course. And how old is he? Is he my age or not? The blonde had few acquaintances. No one wanted to play and communicate with a demon. That is why the boy was so inspired, especially after that incident with his younger brother, and the blue-eyed wheelbarrows walked by himself. Well, now they're asking me questions again. Smiling a little and chuckling, I decided to stop the hail of questions, the brunette, until there were too many of them. He will be a little older than you, but insignificant, like Sasuke. Yes, about like Sasuke. At the mention of the latter, there were notes of sadness in the Uchi's voice. Only a close circle of people, which included Naruto, could distinguish emotions in the voice of the eldest son of the head of the clan. That's great. Despite the fact that Uzumaki understood and heard the sadness in the words of his non-blood brother, he decided to do what he does best to dilute the situation. I look forward to our acquaintance with him. I'd rather be tomorrow. Then go ahead. The training is waiting for you, and then we chatted with you, saying this Itachi. Not much poked Jinchuriki with 2 fingers in the forehead. He muttered something displeased, smiled a little, and then, saying hi, ran away to the clearing, where he continued the interrupted training. Hi, my name is Shin. I'm preparing for the Wanbu service. An orphan. 7 years. There is a non-blood brother and comrade-in-arms SAI, the boy said, apparently, more than once edited speech. Hi, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. Orphan, 7 years old. There are non-blood brothers Itachi, Sasuke and Shin, and a sweet kind smile. And now there were 4 of them again. Ha, and Nikita lost again. A student of the academy turned to a white-haired boy who was taking a breath and lying on the grass. Naruto, I asked without calling me that, the boy begged his brother in anguish. Although he was older than him, but he was much stronger than him. While he himself had only recently begun to prepare for service in the route of the Anbu. Ha. Okay, I won't do it anymore. The boy turned his back to the interlocutor and slowly walked to the exit of the landfill, and then quietly, but loudly enough for Shin to hear, through with a grin of anticipation on his face. Probably. Well, I'm off, bye. With these words, the boy rushed to the exit. Shin, however, just now, having come to his senses, quickly got up from the ground and shouted, "Oh, well, wait. I'm going to catch someone now, and this someone will not be well." From the other end of the training ground, a joyful and cheerful sound reached his ears. And you tried to catch up with me first, and Nikki. Well, that's it, now you'll get it from me. The boy took off and ran after the laughing Naruto. He wasn't mad at him at all. It's just that both orphans sometimes wanted to be the most ordinary children and fool around a little. I did not expect to see a vessel for the 9-tailed one here. The voice of the head of the Anbu route was with a slight hoarseness, and barely concealed notes of interest. Why did you come here, Naruto Uzumaki? The old man's studying gaze met with a determined gaze of blue eyes like the sky. I want to become an Anbuk route, Danza, the boy opposite him, said in a serious and resolute tone. After running his eyes over the Jinchuriki once again, the old man could not restrain a satisfied laugh. I knew you were pretty tough. Well, if now you can defeat one of my Anbu in a test battle, then I will come to you at the root of the Anbu. I agree with your terms and am ready to obey you, Danza-sama. And I like you more and more, Bullnose, the head of the organization, whispered to himself. Stronger. He needs to become stronger in order not to make such mistakes anymore. Itachi, the blonde, ran up to standing on the ledge of the cliff at Chii and stopped near him. Despite the appeal, the named one did not even turn his head in the direction of Jinchuriki, which further alarmed the young quiet genius. Itachi, blue-eyed, tried to meet the brunette's gaze and see on his face what he was thinking. Having received no result, the second-year student took the left wrist from Sneezy. Itachi, something happened. He was seriously frightened by the behavior of his older non-blood brother. Something went wrong on the mission. This assumption arose because of the appearance of the employee at the root of the Anbu. Or Shisui's little brother got injured and is in the hospital. Or maybe Sasuke messed up something. 0 reactions. Itachi, say something, Naruto. Uzumaki shuddered. The tone is too serious. Maybe Itachi is out of sorts today, but Naruto, the speaker's voice is a little hoarse. And at the end of the blonde's name trembled a little. I'm sorry, for what? You didn't do anything to me, even though Jinchuriki tried. But he couldn't figure out what the eldest son of the clan had wanted to tell him. Yes, nothing yet. These words alarmed him even more. What do you mean by that? Speaking, this kid was pressing someone else's hand a little harder. The person standing next to him was looking into the distance and at the same time into nowhere. Do you know what this place is? No. And what? One very strong shinobi, my best friend, died here quite recently, not even like that, a non-blood brother. Naruto stared at Itachi dumbfounded. Uchiha had only 3 people whom he considered to be his non-blood brothers. He's Naruto, Shin. Maybe it couldn't have happened. He couldn't. This blonde was afraid to voice his guess. Shisui. He said the last word almost in a whisper. The one to whom the question was asked was silent. There was not a single emotion on his face. And only after a long pause, he answered, yes, even though it was said very quietly, the boy heard him. Finally loosening his grip, the boy let go of his captain's hand. His hand fell like a heavy weight, hitting the palm of his hand on the bucket. The news just stunned. Now there are only 3 of them left, him and Tachi Ishii. Sakura, you don't know where Sasuke is, the blonde decided to ask one of the most furious fans of the young Uchiha, as well as his love. After all, his former friend has not been seen for a long time. Let him come to the neighborhood just now. The academy, and they personally sent a clone, due to the fact that he had been out for 2 days. And yet, the second lesson is about to begin, and student number 1 is still not in the class. What do you want from Sasuke-kun, asshole? You should have already heard about everything and wished for it. Not to mock him. Although, of course, you're a waif. You lost your family from birth. Surely you're gloating right now. What? What's that got to do with me? And why am I suddenly gloating? The blue-eyed man asked in a voice full of incomprehension. Sasuke Kuna-ina, who is standing next to Sakura and is being discussed with other girls, decided to answer his questions. And despite the fact that 2 days ago the Uchiha clan was completely destroyed, and Sasuke-kun is the only one who survived. Surely he's not up to the academy right now. To think that his own older brother had used Tsukuyori on him. How? The Uchiha clan was destroyed. Itachi imposed his most powerful genjutsu on Sasuke and cut out the clan. No, Itachi couldn't do that. He loved his brother so much and valued his family. Or he could, apparently, yes. He could and did. But why? Why did he do that? 3 questions were spinning in Naruto's head, and the answers to them did not please him at all. Does that mean there are only 2 of them left now? He just has to get stronger to protect those who are left. Team number 7, Sakura Haruna, Naruto Uzumaki, and Sasuke Uchiha. Your Shinsei Kakashi Hatake. A copying ninja. Interesting. Let's see what he's capable of. Before you apply jutsu, think carefully, or his power will turn against you. While saying this, Kakashi picked up a bell from the ground and began tossing it in his hand, looking at Naruto hanging on the rope. And also, don't fall into such obvious traps, idiot. Damn, fuck it all. A ninja should be able to calculate everything in advance. I know. If I knew, I wouldn't tell you about it. Having said that, the ash-haired man turned away from his disciple and began to look out for 2 more of his students. Yeah, Kakashi Hatake, a copying ninja, so much fame and rumors, I'm disappointed in you, so many blind spots. Itachi has only 3 of them, and I counted only 2 at all for Shisui. And you? No, I understand that you don't take us seriously, and especially my cover, but damn, you could at least show Sharingan. I shouldn't have hoped that he would use genjutsu on me. Oh, but Sakura was lucky. I wonder if he imposed it on her with the help of Sharingan, or best. Now I would like to train with a tire, and not hang on a rope under a tree. Naruto, Shin hesitated a little, but still decided to look into the eyes of his non-blood brother. We won't be able to train together anymore. Danza has strengthened my training. I just don't have the strength left to replace myself with a shadow clone and a single training session with you. Yanshariki knew that this conversation would come sooner or later. He had noticed for a long time that each time their joint training sessions began to take place less and less often, and today it seems that they are destined to be forgotten altogether. Plus, Shin's illness has recently begun to progress greatly. He started coughing up blood more often and feeling tired. And only next to Sai did he feel more or less normal. As for Naruto himself, due to the fact that he is a Genshuric and his illness has only recently begun to develop. So, although there were seizures, they were much less frequent than the tire. Both guys understood that over time, the disease would kill them in turn. First the older one, and soon the younger one. Recently, Naruto has been sharing his chakra with the white-haired one because he looked like a squeezed lemon after training. That is why the decision came quickly. Okay, then let's try to meet at least once a month, just to chat. And, if necessary, don't be shy, I will still continue to train here. That is why, if you feel very exhausted or seizures become more frequent, come here. You know how much chakra I have. I am absolutely not sorry to spend it on your treatment. At his words, Shin only smiled warily and nodded slightly. Thanks, then I'm off. And see you in a month. After saying that, Shin turned his back on him and disappeared into the Shinshin. After a month or even 2, he did not appear again. Now he was alone. But even so, he began to improve relations in the 7th team, including Sasuke, who did not remember their friendship. Stronger. He needs to get stronger. He can. He can handle it. Yes, of course. Great question. I am the holy hermit from Mount Myobaku, the Toad Sannin. I am idolized and praised by all representatives of the fair sex. Remember this, said Jiraiya, who bent and slightly sat down on his right leg and stretched out his left leg and arm, while sitting on the head of the summoned toad. The godfather stung a little for a moment in his eyes, but Naruto quickly suppressed this impulse because in fact, he should not know who the man in front of him is to him. I'm not going to miss him now, he can't get away from me. Let him make up for lost time and spend it with his godson. Sasuke escaped from the village. Tsunadi's voice echoed throughout the room. Your mission is to bring him back, and it doesn't matter if he's alive or dead. Perform. I think maybe that's how brothers feel. What? Why won't you leave me alone? There was a pained note in Yuchi's voice. Because I'm connected to you. The first friendship in my life. That's why I have to stop you. Uzumaki was determined. We suffer because of our connections, and you don't know what it's like to lose everything. Believe me, I know, Sasuke, you understand the pain of loneliness as well as I do. And this pain can give strength. Therefore, if I break these bonds, I will become even stronger. With these words, the brunette adjusted his protector. From this second, we will fight as equals. But you won't touch that forehead with a finger. Uchiha poked his finger at his forehead protector, as before. Say what you want, it's useless. Sasuke, Naruto, Sasuke and both rushed at each other with deadly techniques. There was a powerful explosion. Maybe there are 3 of them after all, not 2. Stronger. Stronger. And who is it? Jinchuriki asked the Necroblood brother of Shin, who was sitting next to Saya. This is my non-blood brother. His name was Shin. Called. Naruto's voice faltered. The guess that came to his mind was simply terrible for him. Yes, he died about a year and a half ago. Uzumaki felt how abruptly the ground stopped feeling under his feet. He could hear every beat of his heart. A year and a half ago, he was still on a trip with Jiraiya, to think only a year and a half ago, and he didn't even know about it. There are 2 of them left, he and Itachi, and maybe 3. Sasuke. And now he knew exactly how it would never be again. Damn you, he must become even stronger so as not to lose those who are still alive. I have gathered you all here to report on your mission, and once again the 5th Hokage is sitting at the table in front of them. We have heard rumors that Uchiha Sasuke is located near one of the temples of the Uchiha clan, where he supposedly wants to kill or has already killed his older brother Itachi Uchiha. Your task is to arrive at the place of their battle and either refute or confirm this information, as well as collect a new one. If there is anything, bring it to Kanaka. Perform. Itachi, please, live. Only ruins and a miraculously surviving wall with the coat of arms of the Uchiha clan remained of the temple. There were huge bloodstains under this wall, however, as well as on the wall itself, which was all cracked. Having stopped his running, Naruto hesitantly stopped near her at a distance of 1.5 meters. The stones and remnants of the temple rustled under his feet, but he did not pay attention to it at all. There is almost nothing left, and there is no one here. Was that masked Uchiha right? Uzumaki was hurt by these thoughts, but that's the truth. It looks like Itachi really died. After all, he was sick with the same disease as Naruto and Shin. Yanshariki walked slowly to the wall. He stretched out his right hand, stroked the rough surface, and rested his forehead against the painted drawing, while covering his face with a long bang. Tears poured out of his eyes, which he was unable to hold back. Let the others think what they want. He doesn't care about their opinion. Now that Itachi has died, having studied, only Sasuke and the masked guy are left alive. It hurts. There are only 2 of them left, but it's a matter of time. I was constantly thinking about what or whom I wanted to save. There was a knock on the window. It was Hatake. Naruto, get ready, Hokage is calling you herself, said the uninvited guest, looking at the blonde who had just recently woken up, who did not even get out of bed. At least, about what he wanted with all his heart. Naruto, the 5th voice, sounded like she was getting those words out of themselves with tongs. Gyre died. Silence, accept my regrets. Having once ordered myself to dream of a new future, I was sure that one day I would find it in the present. But fate decided otherwise. The Akatsuki have already captured 7 Biju. Only the 8 tails and 9 tails remained. Thank you and goodbye, the former me and my friends, who once personified this world for me. It turns out that soon Akatsuki will come to Konoha for Jinchuriki. I regret that I remain as weak today as I was then. Hokage-sama. Naruto Uzumaki is missing. Goodbye, the once desired ideal future. The dark silhouette stood on the face of the 4th Hokage for a while longer, after which he gave birth to his left fist. From which green torn leaves fell down, and they were immediately picked up by a weak one. A breeze. Looking at how the wind blows the leaves away, a person began to think about something or remember it. And although that dream has gone to nothing, I can build a new one, disappeared in a pile of leaves. Naruto, Sasuke, both guys were again standing near the statue of the founders of Kanahi. More precisely, what was left of them, and both began to form in the hands of the crown technology. I hate you. And so each of them put the last remnants of their own chakra into their technique. Or maybe, instead of hate, I love. Die. Together with me, if you don't want to live anymore either. In literally an instant, the guys took off and rushed at each other. There was a powerful explosion that was much stronger than the past. Teenagers were blinded by a bright white flash, a clot of their chakra, and then darkness, without sounds and without thoughts. Without anything. Oh yes, I almost forgot to say the most important thing. There aren't any of us left now, are there? Somewhere else in the complete darkness, a man's voice rang out with a certain hoarseness. Ha! Quite interesting. The speaker raised his hand and scratched his chin. The ringing of chains testified to this. I hope I didn't respond to his call for nothing then. I can't wait to see what happens next. Either a smile or a grin appeared on his face. But don't worry, we will definitely meet, and I hope that I will not be disappointed in you, Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto. My dream is to become the strongest ninja. That's how a good half of the class ended their speech when the teacher asked them to introduce themselves. All right, sit down. The next one is Iruka Yumina, and 4 Iruka students. Shinsei looked at the magazine. All the children have already introduced themselves, except one. His first and last name are the last on the list, and this is not surprising. Their owner has failed the Genin exam more than once, and moved from one teacher to another. Teachers mostly rejected it themselves. And there were 2 reasons for this. The first, most importantly, he is a demon, and the second, try to cope with such a scoundrel. The boy in the classroom and not only arranged such miscarriages that you can already sit from one lesson. What can we say about constant training, although the student liked to skip classes? And these days could be safely called weekends. Naruto Uzumaki, named, got up from his seat near the window on the last batch and, smiling broadly, shouted at the whole class girlfriend. You can't call it anything else. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I love ramen, especially old Tuchi's ramen, and to train. I don't like waiting for ramen to brew and when I'm underestimated. And my dream is to become a Hokage by the end of my fiery speech, a boy. He raised his fist and, after looking at everyone with a determined look, sat back down with a satisfied expression on his face. The guys began to whisper to each other. It's that monster? Yeah, Mom and Dad forbid me to communicate with him. Me too. My parents say he's a monster. Everyone who communicates with him will immediately be cursed. Why? You're from a civilian family, and there are various rumors among civilians. I was told not to talk to him because he's a brat. I have everything in the ninja family. And I, too, will become a ninja because of one of the strongest Kunoichi. I will also become a strong Kunoichi. The whole class was having similar conversations, but the one they were discussing didn't pay any attention to it at all. He's used to it. Silence. So now, after we've all introduced ourselves to each other, let's start our lesson. And after everyone fell silent, the new teacher started the lesson. The blonde man looked thoughtfully out of the window. The weather was perfect for walking and training, and not to sit in a stuffy classroom. And listen to the tedious lecture of this and the sensei's hands. That's how he introduced himself. But following the thoughts of running away from lessons again, all teachers usually rejoice when he does so. A recent conversation with Hiruzen popped up in his head. Naruto, I think you should already understand this. A gray-haired old man with wrinkles on his face and dressed in his robe with an inscription. The third Hokage exhaled tobacco vapor from his pipe, paused for a while, thinking about something, and then continued. If you continue to behave like this and do not change your attitude to study, again a heavy sigh from Irutobi forced Naruto to press his head into his shoulders. If this teacher refuses to teach you, or you fail the Genin exam again prolonged silence. You will never be able to become a ninja. Do you hear, Nikak? Yes, he spoke in a calm tone, it seemed, without any threat or coercion. But there were notes of sadness, regret, compassion in his voice. Why would he feel sorry for me? He's a Hokage and has to keep order in the village. What does he care about me at all? I'm a monster and a brat. Although, it's probably because of my parents. He doesn't know that I know who they are. These are the thoughts that visited the boy during a conversation with this person. Naruto, promise that you will pass the exam this time. You see, this is your last chance for the future as a shinobi. The old man turned to Jinchurika. His face, and for the first time during the conversation, looked at him. The boy, who had previously lowered and pressed his head into his shoulders, raised his gaze at him, in which there was a sense of determination. I promise you that I will pass the exam and not disappoint you. And someday, I will definitely become a Hokage and surpass even you, old man 3. Uzumaki jumped off the countertop where he had been sitting and gave the interlocutor opposite a dazzling and hopeful smile. Know this, because I am Naruto Uzumaki. I never give up my words. The one to whom this promise was addressed only imperceptibly smiled at the edges of his old lips. Well, I hope for you and that you will keep and fulfill your word. Be sure of me, old man. I've already said that I don't take back my words. A student of the academy seemed strong, beaming with his own joy. Ha, now the guest who came to the apartment of the boy has a real modest smile. Now I definitely have nothing to doubt. With these words, the ruler of the village went to the exit of the room. Good luck, Naruto. Goodbye, old man. You'll see, everything will be as I promised you. The owner of the blonde crown ran up to the front door. At his statement, a stifled laugh was heard from Hiruzen, who had already crossed the threshold, and the door closed. Uzumaki stood for a while near the threshold, listening to the retreating and slightly shuffling footsteps, and then closed the door with a lock. The smile had long since faded from his face. He was alone again. The school bell brought him out of his memories. The whole class began to stir, and Ruka was finishing the last words, but no one was listening to him anymore. The children ran into the corridor to play catch-up, hide-and-seek and other games, the rest of the guys gathered in small groups, discussing something violently. The classroom quickly emptied. The teacher has gone somewhere, either to watch the children at recess or to the teacher's room for material for the next lesson. There were only 2 people left in the room. A brunette with blue hair, dressed in the trademark clothes of the Uchiha clan, clasped his hands in a lock and put his chin on them. He seemed to be looking straight at the blackboard, and at the same time somewhere behind it, completely ignoring the monster, who also remained in the classroom. That's just unlike Uchiha. Naruto paid attention to him. Looking at the boy sitting on the second game in the second row, the blonde began to scratch cats on the sole. But once we were friends and considered each other almost brothers. Uzumaki still had a hard time accepting the events of that evening when they were with Sasuke, and that was the name of the brunette. Playing in the dark-haired man's room, they did not notice the sound of the front door slamming on the first floor, and the arrival of the head of the family of this house. And when they noticed, it was already too late. "What are you staring at, demon?" The gaze of the blue eyes met with black pools, in which there seemed to be no pupil. "Oh, nothing. And in general, I want to and stare. What difference does it make to you?" The blonde, although completely balanced inside himself, and showing bright emotions, only because of his own image, began to boil a little. He hated it when someone called him that, especially when his former friend and non-blood brother started doing it. "If you were looking somewhere to the side, it would be nothing, but you are looking at me. Naturally, I can't ignore it. And anyway, do you even know who you're talking to about Tradya?" "No, the last Sasuke would never have said that. You don't know who you're messing with." Pain, despair can be brought out only in one way known to him, and working, in the form of anger. Both guys got up from their seats and drilled each other with a menacing and hostile look. Naruto was shaking his fists by force until his knuckles turned white. It was unbearably painful. I wanted to scream with all my might. "Remember me, brother, but you can't. You can't because of that damn fool mask. It is impossible because of the fact that events will follow after this, clearly not in favor of Jinchuriki. You can't because perhaps it would have come to a fight if the bell hadn't rung for the lesson." Now the blue-eyed man could say with certainty that he had never experienced such relief as now. He didn't want to fight him. The classroom seemed to be filled with students who, without noticing the teacher, continued to chat on various topics. Special attention was attracted by the company of a fan of Uchiha, who surrounded her object of imitation from all sides. Their group screamed Sasuke-kun every now and then. The idol himself continued to drill Uzumaki with his gaze until he disappeared from his line of sight. Having stopped trying to establish eye contact with his rival, the boy began to fend off the annoying crowd of fans. "Yeah, it's still a sight, but from the girly squeak, I wanted to plug my ears with my hands and leave the room." That's just the blonde was also not deprived of attention. A group of boys approached him, with their leader walking in front of them. It was some kind of obviously civilian, but too confident and imagining himself to be the strongest kid. "Hey, you monster. I'm talking to you. Have the conscience to pay attention to me. If you don't leave the classroom or the village right now, we will beat you. Believe me, no one will come to your funeral, because there won't be any. You are the unwanted brand of Kanahi, and they will thank you so much for what we will do with you. Adults are just too lazy to have time to wash their hands about you, but we have the time and desire for this. So either get lost," or the bully showed a weighty fist. There was a cheeky grin on his face. The boys standing behind him also started grinning, showing their fists and jumping up. He was in trouble, and he also wanted to replace himself with a shadow clone at this change. Well, not fate. We need to sort them out somehow. But how when you are the last in progress and the weakest in the class? Damn mask. Where I want to be, that's where I am. And anyway, why are you all bothering me? They would have stood quietly on the sidelines and kept quiet. "Oh, you bastard. Guys, let's give him a hard time. It seems that luck is on Uzumaki's side today after all." A teacher entered the classroom. Quickly, everyone sat down in their seats. After waiting for everyone to follow his instructions, Yumina continued. Now we will go to the backyard of the academy and practice throwing kunai and shuriken. I've already told you the theory in the first lesson. At the same time, I ask you to adhere to the safety rules. Naruto didn't listen any further. It wasn't the first time he had heard the briefing, and why would he? When everyone started to leave the guy's room, they accidentally brushed his shoulder for the case. Let's see how you scum will throw weapons. The mockery was clearly heard in the voice. Now it is better to remain silent, so as not to arrange a new conflict. The whole class came for Chunin to the training ground of the academy. So, get in line, and now I'm going to call you on the list, and you will throw weapons at each one attempt. Today we just train, and the day after tomorrow we pass for evaluation. Do you understand everything? Yes, there was a chorus of joyful and anticipating children's voices. All right. So, the first Kiba and Muzuka. Ha! Easy going. A boy with red marks on his cheeks and brown hair color came out into the middle of the semicircle formed from the guys. A wave. The sound of flying iron. 7 out of 10. Well done. Next one. The blonde man stood and was bored on the sidelines. Maybe now you can replace yourself with a shadow clone. No one pays any attention to him anyway. Sasuke Uchiha called the next student and the hand. Interesting. We used to compete with him in throwing kunai and shuriken. I, as having more experience in this business, always won it and hit the target. 9 out of 10 is the best result in the class. After these words, a deafening girly squeak swept through the entire training ground. Sasuke-kun, you are so cool. Naruto just rolled his eyes at this. Let his former non-blood brother improve his result, he is still far from it. The next Naruto, Uzumaki. Well, now let's check the reflexes of this and human's hands. A grin of anticipation appeared on his face. Are you smiling, demon? You think you're all so cool. Nifiga, you will not hit the target once, and even more so you will not throw at 10 out of 10. After these words, all the guys laughed. The boy, like the others before him, stood in a special stand in the center of the semicircle. Close your eyes, concentrate, feel the chakra of the teacher standing next to the tree. The blonde barely restrained a smile at the sight of Ruki holding a tablet with a pen and dodging throwing weapons flying at him. The last one flew a millimeter from the teacher's head. It's a pity that there were only 10 shurikens. After a moment of confusion, Sensei looked at the target. 2 out of 10. Naruto, look where you're throwing. Sorry, and Sensei's hand, and the sweet innocent face. Ha ha ha, either at the teacher, or at him, the guys laughed. A loser, a disgrace, a show-off, a demon, a brat, it looks like days. Although what did he expect? Guys, stop it. Calm down, class. Stop laughing at him. Some of you have never been hit at all. What's that? Did he stand up for me? The boy's face expressed real surprise and disbelief in what was happening. Just ignore him, send everything to the next lesson. Well, maybe we'll arrange additional practical classes, and hand sensei. The guys and the teacher went back to the academy. Uzumaki, on the other hand, stood in place, looking into the void. The last words echoed painfully in my heart. And I almost believed it. After standing there for a while longer, he turned around and strode away from the academy, not even replacing himself with a clone. It was a shame, terribly insulting. There was a little tingling in his eyes, but the blonde was holding back tears because now he would go to their meeting place, at the abandoned and forgotten landfill, located further away from the others. From Kanahi, and when he gets there, he will meet him again. Today is the day when Itachi promised to introduce him to his new friend. The only thing Naruto knew was that the boy was about his age and was preparing for service at the root. The village of the hidden leaf, literally the village. Hidden by tree foliage, the hidden village of the land of fire is like a village of one of the 5 great shinobi countries. The hidden leaf has Kaguya as its leader, known as Hokage. Kanaha is located deep in the forest at the foot of the mountain. Like the Hokage rock, where the face of every shinobi who held the post of Hokage is engraved, as a rule. The strongest ninja in the village. That's what Chunin, an eternally cheerful and vitally joyful boy, who was running from to middle rank, wanted to become. "Oh, you bastard, you bastard! Come here!" The first Chunin shouted somewhat inarticulately in a drunken voice. "Come here, demonic brat. Now we're going to pile on you, and they'll make us into Jonins right away." The second, it seems, a friend of the first, had no different own intention from the beginning. "The intention of your friend. Catch them first," the blond man shouted at them, "and hit on them quickly and away from these two." "What did you say there?" "Well, that's it, we're going to kill you now," and we both accelerated. What a mess. I wanted to leave normally quietly, but no. It was necessary to run into them. That's what they can't sleep. It's only 7 in the morning, or they returned late yesterday with a mission and decided to celebrate by drinking a glass of sake. Such were the thoughts of the young Uzumaki while he was running to a small street ending in a dead end. There he had his own trap, made with the help of Fuinjutsu, a weak one for 2 tipsy Chunins should hold. Naruto barely managed to evade the kunai flying at him, solely due to reflexes. Not for the first time chasing him like that to beat him. This happens especially often on this day. On the same day, but 5 years ago, although it will be exactly 6 years at night, the village was attacked by a 9-tailed demon fox. The most majestic and powerful of all Biju, Kubi no Yoka. On the same day, the 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze removed him, sealing his own newborn child in him. The boy did not know the details of that day, because they were classified, but still he managed to explain something. For example, that he, the son of Yandami and his cheats, Uzumaki Jug, everyone, including Hiruzen, thought that by giving him his mother's last name, he would not recognize his parents. After all, the Uzumaki clan has long since disintegrated, and the redheads have long dispersed around the world, in search of a new haven. The impending festival in honor of the victory over the Kyuubi caused conflicting feelings in Naruto. The villagers hated him because the 9-tail was sealed in him. Every year during the holiday he was attacked, trying to vent his accumulated anger. "Damn, they also want to knock me out with kunai and shurikens when this damn dead end already appears." This time Uzumaki paid for his inattention. One of the kunai flew right in front of his face, scratching his cheek, albeit not much, but still unpleasant. That's right, the kid was pressing his jaws with force. His regeneration was good, but you can't hope for it alone. We have to run even faster, and here is the turn to that very street. So, it remains to be patient a little more. Cut a fireball. What? The second Chunin, who apparently got tired of throwing pieces of iron into the Jinchuriki, folded the seals, and exhaled a large, by the standards of the blue-eyed, fireball. Damn, how many times a day he says this word. To be honest, he didn't count, but he knew that a lot. Naruto continued to run without slowing down, and turned his head back to estimate the approximate distance, and how much this technique would bring him burns. It seems that this time I won't get off with bruises alone, he won't have time to turn the corner with all his desire. So we can only hope for the best outcome for him. But then something happens that the blonde did not expect. He bumps into some guy holding his hand with all his stupidity, a boy very similar to him. As a result, Naruto, along with this very boy, fell to the ground, and that guy stared at them in bewilderment. Looking up at the Uzumaki, I saw on both of them the family coat of arms of the Uchiha clan. And after the fireball, which no one cancelled, damn, now not only he, but also both passersby who met him are in danger. And all because of him. But what was his surprise when the older brunette's gaze instantly became serious, and he folded the seal and shouted, "Kaiten, the great fire step." Both techniques collided. A hot wave swept over everyone. The boy saw for the first time when fire was fighting fire, and he had the right angle. The older Uchiha was standing with his back to him, the coat of arms on his clothes, like she herself, was swaying. Because of the hot shock wave and the wind. Her hair, braided in a low short tail, and the color of a crow's wing, was slightly disheveled. He did not stop feeding his fireball with the elemental chakra, and as a result, his ball absorbed Chunin's ball. Now that the danger has passed, the person standing in front of Naruto has stopped feeding his technique with chakra. And it soon dissipated. The boy saw the terrified faces of the two shinobi who were chasing him. What's going on here? His savior's voice was even, but menacing. He spoke evenly and clearly, but he didn't mince every word, not at all. Seriousness and confidence emanated from him. And Itachi himself, we chased a defenseless 5-year-old child and used techniques and weapons in the chase. Not a question, but a statement. We. Spare Itachi yourself. We just wanted to. Yeah. There is no trace left of the past self-confident Chunins. Instead, there were two shinobi who were ready to do anything to be spared. So, now the two of you are going to your homes. Get yourself in order, and today at 6 p.m. I'm waiting for you at the workplace. I will also definitely report this to Fugakusen. What are you standing for? Perform. It was only now that Jinchuriki noticed that everyone present, except himself, was wearing on their clothes. Drawing of a red and white fan. There is. The Chunin straightened up as if on a string and disappeared into the whirlwinds of leaves. Shunshin flashed through his thoughts when suddenly it descended on the boy. Uchi, police, Itachi-san, Fugaku-san. Damn, I'm in trouble. He was the head of the police and part-time Uchiha clan. He had a wife, Mikoto-san, and two sons, both Tachi and Sasuke. This made the blonde shudder, and he quickly began to figure out what to do and how to get out of it now. After all, he framed two heirs of the main branch of the Uchiha clan. Danger beat down the youngest son of Fugakusen, looking a little more at where the men had been standing, and Tachi turned to the boys. Sasuke, how are you? Concern for his younger brother flashed across his face. It's all right, not isn't. You gave them such a hard time. I want it that way too. Will you teach me this technique? Sasuke's eyes sparkled with stars, and there was not a drop of resentment against Uzumaki or fear about the recent event. The older Uchiha smiled slightly and nodded to him, after which he looked at Naruto again with concern. With a glance. How are you? You have a wound on your cheek. Let me see. Itachi had already pulled his hand to the boy's face when suddenly Naruto recoiled from him. It's all right, Itachi, by himself. Thank you for saving me. And the wound. She will heal quickly herself, and is radiant, and explains. A reassuring smile. She always convinces everyone that everything is fine and worry about nothing. And yet it must be processed. You're bleeding. Jinchuriki dodged another attempt to help him again. I told you that everything is fine and will heal itself. And in general, he turned his head in the direction of Sasuke and said, already addressing him, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to knock you down. I didn't notice. He really felt guilty. It's okay, I forgive you, the interlocutor answered him, after which he moved closer. And I poked his cheek with my index finger. And what are those stripes on your cheeks? I've never seen anything like it. He ran the pad of his finger along one of the strips. It doesn't look like a marker. But you look like a kitten. You're just missing your ears. Then the boy turned to Itachi. Nizen, I also want these stripes for myself. I don't think Mikoto will approve. The older brother smiled kindly, and yes, Sasuke, they are not painted, they are scars. Scars Jr. had a puzzled expression on his face. Yes, the scars. A wound that leaves a trace resembling a stripe, or, as in our case, stripes, is called a scar or scars. That is, this wound on his cheek will also become a scar. Now Sasuke was excited and, turning to Naruto, said, you need to process it. Don't be afraid, when I broke my column, it was very painful. The blood was in. He spread his hands to the sides, showing how much blood there was, and then Mom took it. And with the help of a special technique cured her. It didn't hurt at all. Then he looked at his brother again. Itachi, you own such a technique. The older brunette smiled, awkwardly and guiltily. I'm sorry, Sasuke, but I don't own an Iryuenjutsu, but I have a first aid kit. Having said that, Itachi took out of his pocket a small scroll about the size of a child's fist and printed it out. From there, a small first aid kit. Tell me, what's your name? The gaze of the jet-black eyes, in which there seemed to be no badge, was riveted on the blonde. End Naruto. After all, it is necessary to introduce yourself to your savior. Is that a supplement to ramen? Is that really your name? Childish naivety. Sasuke. Itachi gave his brother a stern look. Okay, I'm giving up. Now 2 pairs of black eyes were staring at him. Naruto, come to me. You need to treat the wound, said the eldest of the brothers, taking out a layer. With some kind of medicinal ointment. No, I told you it would heal. How many times do I have to repeat this to you? But honestly, how many times can I? Or are they deaf? Sasuke can treat his wound while I'm holding him, Itachi said in a playful voice. Is he joking like that? Why do they even need me? Yeah, the younger one responded cheerfully. Itachi smiled at him, passing the patch with ointment, and then at one point, suddenly appeared behind Uzumaki. And did not hurt his hands behind his back, holding him tightly. Let me go, Dotobaya. Let me go now. Can you hear me? Sasuke first apply a little healing ointment to the wound, rub it, and then glue the patch. All right, Nizan. The boy unscrewed the lid from the jar and, having collected a small amount of ointment, brought it to the cheek of the blonde, who immediately began to turn his head in all directions. Don't turn your head. I can't treat it like that for you, Sasuke was indignant after several unsuccessful attempts. And I don't need you to process it, trying to escape from the grip of the older Uchiha, shouted Uzumaki. Have your parents never treated your wounds? There was no limit to the boy's indignation. And then Naruto's nerves broke down. Imagine, yes, I have no parents. I've been a street kid since birth. The younger one froze and stared at him as if he were a ghost. How is it that there are no parents? Everyone should have them. Well, as you can see, not everyone. I am Naruto Uzumaki, an orphan from birth. Until his 5th birthday, he lived in a shelter, after which Hiruzen gave me an apartment. Something like that. Nice to meet you. But there must be parents. This is impossible. Sasuke's voice trembled treacherously. Sasuke has children who have no parents for various reasons. They live in a shelter until they are old enough to take care of themselves. There were notes of sadness and compassion in Itachi's voice. Itachi seemed like the boy was about to cry. Yes, it happens, and there's nothing you can do about it. Shinobi go on missions in which they can die, and the children end up alone. Sasuke lowered his head so that his black hair covered his face. There was silence, after which the boy abruptly raised his head and said in a decisive tone, I don't want Naruto to be alone. I want him to be my brother. Itachi, like Naruto, stared at him in surprise. Sasuke, I fully approve of your decision. But if you want to prove that you can become Naruto's brother, then take care of him. The older Uchiha spoke in a serious voice. That's right, and having made a concentrated and slightly frowning face, the boy began to rub the healing ointment on Uzumaki's cheek. The blonde himself was in some kind of port. He stopped understanding what was going on. Everything seemed to him like a very strange dream. Why? Jinchuriki whispered softly and involuntarily. Because that's what we decided. Itachi answered him in a warm voice, and Sasuke was already gluing a plaster on his cheek. But why? I'm a demon, he wanted to say, but he was interrupted. Objections are not accepted. Now you will be our younger non-blood brother, both Uchiha said. These words made the blonde man's eyes sting. You don't have to say anything, said the older brunette, releasing his hands. Let's go. Where to? In a whisper. Sasuke and I initially went to the training ground to train. Come with us. But, and again the stern look of the black eyes. Okay, both brothers helped him get up from the ground, and the 3 of them went to practice. Together. Naruto would never have thought that he could go with someone together and listen to someone else's chatter. He didn't catch the meaning, but he knew one thing. Together. Itachi's voice came out of the memory of a slightly smiling blonde man sitting under the shade of a tree. Hello there. How long have you been sitting here? Yes, no. It's just that there were some difficulties at the academy, and I left early. I see. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry for that, but you didn't do anything, you started coming back. Fight Naruto. That's right, nothing, sadness. There is a lot of undisguised sadness in his voice. Ah, the blonde did not understand. Then, I'll come a little earlier with a mission. It's not your fault how many times I tell you this. But I could have come earlier, and not for. Go into that shop with Dango. Itachi, because of me, you don't have any friends at all, except for me and Shin. Shin, at first Jinchuriki wanted to object, but after hearing an unfamiliar name, interest overcame him. Yes, Shina, remember when I promised to introduce you to him? Uchiha smiled warmly. Yes, I remember. Where is he? Uzumaki couldn't wait to meet him. He was about to start searching for him through the chakra, when a blonde boy jumped off a tree branch, 2 years older than him at most. Hi, my name is Sheed. I am preparing for service in the Anbu horse. Orphan, 7 years old. There is a non-blood brother and comrade-in-arms Sai, the boy said, apparently more than once a rehearsed speech. Hello there. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Orphan, 7 years old. There are non-blood brothers Itachi, Sasuke, Shisu, and Shin. And a nice kind smile. Shin looked at him in surprise, then asked uncertainly. Another tire. Naruto could barely contain his laughter. Can you introduce me to him? Of course, he's right in front of me. Ah, the kid turned around, but seeing no one at the training ground, except for the 3 of them, he looked at the blonde again. Me. Yeah, nice to meet you. I can call you brother. With these words, Jinchuriki extended his hand to Shin for a handshake. Well, I don't mind. Shin smiled broadly and shook the blonde man's hand uncertainly. The gaze of milky violet eyes met with pools as blue as a clear sky. Both guys shook hands with someone for the first time, and for the first time felt as if they had known each other all their lives. We got acquainted, reminded of his presence and the car. Yes, at the same time. Then we will start our training, after which we will go and eat dango. Iraman, the blue-eyed one added. Of course, Iraman. And he couldn't help but chuckle. Naruto also giggled involuntarily. Isshin repeated after him, after which a ringing, sincere and cheerful laugh resounded through the forgotten landfill. It's not that bad. Everything is just disgusting. Such thoughts were in Uzumaki, sweeping the floor in the classroom. He just got very bored listening to a teacher giving a long lecture. It was either about how to use the chakra, or about the history of the founding of Kanahi. In general, only Kami herself knows what she was about. So Naruto decided to have some fun. Since the last school year, he began to carry with him to classes a check conducting paper, on which he trained to draw seals. At first, the seals were simple to seal, and then each time it gets more complicated. Naruto was actually very educated, constantly reading something and learning to write in a calligraphic handwriting. Calligraphy will help Fuinjutsu, namely in the manufacture of explosion seals, barriers, spatial pockets. He wanted to reach such a level that just by writing Fuin seals in the air, they would activate, taking out the sealing seals he had already written from the last time. And with a surprise for everyone except him, he quietly created 2 clones under Heian for a fly. They took the seals and, flying up to the ceiling, began to install them. There are 4 seals at the corners of the perimeter of the classroom, 1 seal in the middle, and 1 directly above the teacher. Naturally, no one looked at the ceiling, and, having quickly finished all the preparations, Uzumaki dispelled the clones. Well, an insidious and anticipatory smile appeared on Naruto's face. Art is an explosion. A child's hand folded a hand seal. Cut. 6 explosions were heard. The room was slightly filled with colored special smoke, and confetti fell. All the students were shocked and scared to death, let alone smart. The boy began to learn funjutsu at about 5.5 years old. Then, once again, having made a trip to the city library, under the guise of some civilian guy, Jinchuriki decided to look into the department with the oldest books. They were somewhat intricate and shabby and uninteresting to young people. But Naruto still soberly reasoned that the old books were written by the same, at the moment, old people. And old people have much more experience than young people, and the times were different then. In a word, war. And not just a war, but numerous wars between clans. Naturally, the older generation wrote various strong fighting techniques and tactics for their future descendants. Then it was necessary that each clan had its own power, so the description in the books was what was needed. But soon a small problem appeared. Access to this department was allowed only with a personal pass from Hokage, so under the guise of an ordinary civilian boy. He would not be allowed there. Then what should I do? The answers to the solution were found quite quickly. Since the old man the third did not see any danger in the boy and any desire for knowledge, he allowed him to sit in his office. While he worked, sometimes he was called from his workplace for some kind of interview or for the council of elders. Naruto stayed in the office alone. Hiruzen trusted him, and the boy responded in kind. Therefore, when he came from the next council or interview, he found the blonde sleeping on the guest sofa in the corner. And the room itself remained as clean as before leaving. But this time the blue-eyed one wasn't going to sleep, and one day he came back to sit in the old man's office. The latter, as always, warmly welcomed him, and after a little chat with him, he resumed his work. Uzumaki was quietly sitting on the guest sofa and practicing calligraphy. After all, he wants to become a Hokage, and where have you seen a Hokage who writes like a chicken paw? And after about an hour and a half, Sarutobi was called to some kind of meeting. He, of course, got up from his workplace and, after saying goodbye to the boy, told him to sit quietly. The door of the office was locked with a key. After waiting for Hiruzen and his escort to go away, the Jinchuriki began to act. He knew that one of the old man's personal Anbu was watching him through the window, but it was quite easy to deal with him. Sexy jutsu. With these words, there was a bang, and now a beautiful and half-naked blonde, with two long braided tails, is looking at Anbu. The Anbu has been eliminated. Now we need to act, and the sooner the better. The masked man, who was eliminated by Naruto, should soon come to his senses and come to himself. And then tell the third about what happened. Quickly running up to the desktop, the boy began to look for something resembling a pass. Having found such a blank sheet, he took out a brush from the inkwell and began to enter the necessary information into the lines. Permission for admission. So, and how would I write myself down? I need to come up with a fake first and last name. That's just what the hell, I somehow didn't think about it. Quickly starting to scroll through all possible options in his head, he suddenly remembered the title of the book that he had read, one of the very first, namely, The Legend of a Completely Fearless Shinobi, authored by one of the legendary Sanins of Jiraiya. The main character's name was, like himself. Therefore, after a little thought, the boy wrote on a piece of paper, Ditunfuteki Menma. Ditunfuteki means fearless, and Menma is just as much an extra addition to ramen as Naruto. After filling out everything else, the blonde man looked at the result and quickly left, or rather, got out of the office through. A young man was standing in front of a desk in the library. He had short pointed brown hair with two small pigtails wrapped in small bandages framing both sides of his face, in a similar manner to the hairstyle of the fourth Haka, as well as somewhat harsh facial features. The visitor was dressed in a combat, but very beautiful white kimono with a black belt, and the same black fire running along the edges of the fabric. In general, they look like Ashura Ekutsuki, but without a bandage on his forehead and a slightly different kimono. He could barely hold back and hide the trembling in his hands when the librarian, a rather cute and beautiful brown-eyed brunette girl, looked at him, then at the permission from Hokage. It seemed to him that if she looked into his eyes, she would immediately expose him. But the fears were in vain. Having said, "It's strange that I haven't seen you in the village before, nor have I heard about your clan. But since Hokage herself will allow it." As a result, having conducted the Jinchuriki under the Henza, the librarian offered to make him tea and hurriedly left. After looking after her, the blue-eyed man again examined the room in which he found himself and could not restrain a sigh of admiration. Wow! There are so many old books here. Of course, I'll get in trouble from Hiruzen later, but he's unlikely to find out what I was doing in his office. Now I can consider that all these books are practically mine. Only, alas, it is impossible to take them home But come on, something is better than nothing. After walking along the long Uzumaki stilettos, he found several books that interested him on the development of sensorix, improving the throwing of iron weapons, various styles of taijutsu, and interesting ninjutsu techniques. Sitting over the zabuton, I am a Japanese flat seat cushion. And having arranged the books on a small table, he began to read. After about 10 minutes, the library came up to him. With your permission, I'd like to have a little chat with you while you drink tea. After all, I've been working here for a long time, even as a girl and the daughter of a former librarian. And I can help you with something. For example, to find books to your liking. By the end, the girl somehow hesitated. Probably, the blonde has overdone his appearance a little bit, but what can I do? But it was missed. I wouldn't mind, he replied, keeping a serious, but making a slightly interested expression on his face. As you say, Menma himself. Anyway, I'd like to show you some book. It is very ancient, and was brought to our village from Yuzush itself. Of course, everyone was interested in it, but as it turned out, the book did not want to share knowledge in it. As it did not want to share knowledge, you know, when people wanted to read what was written in it, it did not open. As if its pages were glued together with glue. They tried to set her on fire and soaked her in water. Everything is useless. It doesn't open, and that's it. The brown-eyed one fell silent, apparently realizing that she had raised her voice, and then continued in a calmer tone. After a sea of unsuccessful attempts, she was left alone for a while. I took advantage of this moment, she faltered, but then, clenching her fists, looked straight into Naruto's eyes and hid her far away. I felt very sorry for her. So mock the book. After a while, the Anbu came, but not finding the book, although I very much doubted that they were seriously interested in finding it. They left. Everyone soon forgot about the book. Here. Interesting. And where is the book itself? You can watch it. Since she told me everything, it means that Henza really succeeded. Of course, I'll get it now. The girl jumped up from her seat, but suddenly froze and, slightly squeezing the hem of her dress, said, "Just don't tell anyone about it." Well, there was a barely noticeable blush on her cheeks. No one had ever talked to Naruto like that before, and he was inwardly rejoicing that he was able to achieve such an appeal to himself. Well, how about yourself? It's Menno in Dayton Futech, but he is Menno. Of course, I won't tell anyone. I don't like it when books are bullied. And how can you substitute such a beautiful girl? Jinchuriki smiled brightly, and the brunette, covered with a bright blush, hurried after the book, squeezing out of herself. Ha, well, thanks for the compliment. As soon as the girl disappeared from Uzumaki's field of view, he hid his face in his hands and tried to restrain the laughter that was tearing outside. He clearly went too far. Here is the very book I was talking about. The librarian put a very weighty book on the table. Interesting. Come on. Taking the object brought by the girl in his hands, the man tried to open it, but the miracle did not happen. Oh, and I thought I'd be lucky. Involuntarily raising his finger to his mouth and biting the skin a little, the blue-eyed man began to think what to do. There was silence for a while, when suddenly, a familiar voice rang out from behind him. Did you come up with something, Men Mason? The librarian somehow got behind him, which greatly confused the visitor, and he bit off his finger in fright. Why are you scaring me so much that I almost bit my finger off? Excuse me, Menma-san, I'm going to get the healing massy. No need, I'm a shinobi or something, and there were not such wounds. I'm not going to die from this little wound, be calm, but we'll figure something out with the book. With these words, he put his hand so much that he bit his finger on the book. Okay, Menma-san, she was clearly depressed about something. I think I'll try to open the book again. Maybe a miracle will happen after all, Naruto said with a slight encouraging smile, although he did not believe what he was saying. But even if it doesn't work out, he will make you laugh with his own. The performance of Koriglazu. He certainly knew how to make people laugh. Look here. Now I, the great and unique Dayton Futiki Menma, will open this book. His whole speech was accompanied by funny antics and rare sit-along glances at the girl. So, Dad, the book has opened. Both couldn't believe their eyes. The librarian was the first to recover. It opened. It opened. Look, it's opened. How did you manage it, Men Mason? And I think I'll give you this book. After all, you are the only one who could open it. And also, if possible, I will let you in here without a pass and allow you to take some books from here. After all, what you have just done is simply amazing. Yeah, thanks for your kindness. Then let's just talk to you. And then I'm going home. All right. I agree, Menma-san. After pouring themselves a cup of tea, they began to discuss various books, sections, genres, and much more. And then, they quietly began to talk about themselves. Of course, Naruto didn't say much about himself, and if he did, he made up most of it. But his interlocutor seemed to have told everything about herself that she could. Leaving the knowledge library, Menma waved to his new girlfriend. Bye. I'll come back tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow too. Goodbye, Menma-san. I'll be looking forward to seeing you. And I will prepare for your arrival the books you asked for. The girl also waved to him. There was a faint blush on her cheeks, and spots from the setting sun played in her hair. A light breeze blew. Oh yes, I forgot to say. Just call me by my first name, without respectful suffixes. Okay, provided that you also address me as you. Her face lit up with a gentle smile. Agreed. Bye, Azumi, bye, Menma, they parted friends. From that day on, Naruto, or rather Menma, had a new girlfriend, and Uzumaki now had a whole library at his disposal. And this is a mysterious book with an interesting title, Fuinjutsu of the Blood Demon Clan. Naruto, don't stand there, you made a mess yourself, you clean it up yourself. Come on, I'm looking. And Ruka looked up firm, filling out the paperwork, and began to watch the local hooligan being cleaned. That's crazy. Usually the teachers kick me out of the classroom and tell me to go far away, as long as I don't get caught in the eye. And he not only drills me with his eyes, but also makes me work. And as much as he is not disgusted to look at the monster, Uzumaki resentfully puffed out his right cheek, and began to work faster with a brush. After looking at his student and the hand, he began to fill out the papers again, but after 5 minutes. Some other teacher entered the classroom, and urgently called him to the staff room. Jackpot. Oh, good. Naruto, stay here until you clean up. With these words, the two Chunins left the classroom, not forgetting to close the door. Assholes, but come on, you clearly underestimate me. I'm sorry, old man 3, but I have to do this. Making a devilish smile of Jinchuriki, he put the brush aside, and took out a pack of seals from his spatial pocket. And again resolved them on the ceiling. But this time there were more seals, and there was a more epic surprise than the last one. Having finished with their installation, the boy created a special masking barrier. After that, he went up to the blackboard, and, taking a piece, he painted it all over. And finally, his good old trick. He hung a bucket of ice water over the door and rubbed the floor with soap. After all, this is considered for washing the floor, just in case of a fireman pulling the Kazumaki forest from below. Quite dusted off his hands from invisible dirt and examined the room. All that remains is to remove, rake the last remaining garbage into one pile in the corner, and dump it out of here, through a small, narrow and helpfully open window. Ha! And Sensei's hand. You didn't forbid me to use Henza. Quickly removing the trash, the blonde folded the seals. Henza. A small blue bird flew out of the office through the window. There is nothing more beautiful than the feeling of flying, when you fly high above the ground and soar into the sky. I want to fly there, into the blue sky, and never come back. The feathers are pleasantly caressed by the wind. The sun warms with its rays. And the view, flying on Naruto Kanaha, was involuntarily forgotten. He stopped remembering who he was and where he came from. I remember earlier, even before I went to the academy, Jinchuriki liked to climb on his father's head and admire the view presented in front of him. And every time, unable to stand it, he jumped with himself. Rocks. He liked the feeling of flying, but everything beautiful ends sometime. The flight also ended. Circling over an abandoned training ground, The birds glided down and landed on one of the old training poles. Poof! A small cloud of smoke rose. And instead of a bird, a blue-eyed blonde with 3 stripes on each cheek appeared. Hello, Naruto. How many times have I told you that it's dangerous to use this Henzo? A brunette immediately appeared next to Uzumaki. Hello to you too, Itachi. You know me? Nothing can replace the feeling of flying for me. The kid said the last sentence with a very dreamy expression on his face. I know, but where have you been? Sasuke came from the academy a long time ago and said that lessons were over. Uchiha put his head on his shoulder. I was detained and told to clean up the classroom. So, Sasuke was right when he said that you staged almost fireworks there. Not a question, but a statement. Why are you asking me if you know the answer yourself? I'd like to hear how you managed to do that. Oh, nothing special. It was just a very boring lecture. I see. Are we going to hone taijutsu today, or are you going to argue with Shin again? What do you think about this? The blonde man asked, looking at the tree branch and the shadow hidden in the foliage. How did you find me? I hid the chakra from my hiding place. Shin got out and immediately jumped into the clearing to his friends. More precisely, not blood brothers anymore. You just have to consider that I'm a very good censor. It's just like Itachi told me. I want to take revenge from you. I lost yesterday, but today I know a little more about you than when we first met. Are you sure? No offense, but I'm still stronger than you. Naruto jumped off the pole and approached the guys. I know that, and that's why I want to fight you again. I'm ready. To the service in the root of the Angu, and if I can't at least scratch you, then I have nothing to do there. Please fight me, brother. I really lack combat experience. After finishing his request, Shin bowed to the blue-eyed man, right up to the waist. Okay, I accept your challenge. But straighten up, please, I'm kind of uncomfortable. He began to wave his hands, and the tips of his ears turned slightly red from embarrassment. Well, the named one immediately straightened up when we start. Yes, even now. Itachi, give us a start, please. Naruto turned his head to the older brunette. Okay, first of all, move away from each other. Both non-blood brothers obeyed him. So, let's get started. As soon as Sneezy waved his hand, both guys took off. It's been 3 weeks since I met Shin. All these days, Naruto continued to go to the academy or send his clones there and train. And in his spare time, he continued to improve his Fuinjutsu level. Sometimes Shisui came to them in training. It was a clansman of the Uchi brothers from the secondary branch. But despite this, the strength of his eyes was envied even by Itachi himself, even if he did not show it. Shisui was about 2-3 years older than Fugaku's eldest son, and yet both Uchiha served in the root of the Anbu, and soon became firm comrades in the service behind the Adam's apple friends. And then brothers. Although, if you think about it, they were originally Sokolovci after all. It was Shisui who became Itachi's older brother, the support of someone to look up to. After all, the childhood of the eldest son of the head of the Uchiha clan was not sugar. Fugaku was a rather strict father. He wanted Itachi to become a worthy heir without a single flaw, and Mikoto could only praise her son for his success, feed, sympathize. Pat on the head, say how much she and her father loved him. Everyone, the boy's mother, let her be the wife of Fugaku himself, but she did not have as such power and the weighty price of her voice. Of course, they listened to her opinion, but it didn't change much. But even so, she still tried to give Itachi all her love, knowing how much she was missing. Mikoto was always sincere in her intentions. There was not a single note of any falsehood in her attitude towards her son. And yet there was little support only from her mother. The father did not neglect his son. No, not at all. For success, he sometimes praised the brunette, but mostly just took for granted. However, like the rest of the Uchiha, after all, he is the son of the head of the clan, he is a genius, so it should be. Itachi stood in the forest all alone, holding the kunai between his fingers, for there are only 8 in each hand. He closed his eyelids, exhaled slowly, and pushed off the ground as hard as he could. Turning upside down in the air, Itachi pressed his hands to his chest, and then abruptly spread them apart. 8 blades flashed in the dimness and scattered in different trajectories. Knock, knock, knock. Itachi landed, and the sounds echoed around him from all sides. The sharp blades stabbed into the center of the targets hanging from the cedar trees. Great, a voice suddenly rang out behind him. Itachi, holding his breath, turned around and saw a black-haired boy. Kanahi's protector flashed on his forehead. The stranger was clearly older than him. "How old are you?" the boy asked. Itachi didn't know his name, but his face was familiar. "Another shinobi from the Uchiha clan." "5. At your age, is it so masterful to handle kunai? You really are something." The kid held out his hand. "My name is Uchiha Shisui. I know Itachi, the son of the commanding officer of the military police, Fugue Husen." This friendly behavior puzzled Itachi, and it probably showed on his face, because Shisui shrugged and said, "I've heard that you're an amazing kid, and don't want to communicate with people. And you're definitely stubborn if you don't need anything." "Oh, don't say that." Shisui laughed and disappeared. Itachi involuntarily began to look for him with his eyes, and finally found him. Here he is in the sky. Shisui was dancing in the air, almost like Itachi himself a few moments ago. He spread his arms out to the sides, and 8 glittering blades sliced through the air. "Wow!" Itachi's eyes widened in amazement. "Well," Shisui landed and grinned contentedly. "I'm pretty good with kunai too, right?" Next to the kunai, running and tachi, new ones stuck out, almost closely Shisui's work. "I've been watching you train here every day for quite a while now." He slowly approached Itachi and held out his hand to him again. "Let's be friends." Shisui's warm voice and his friendliness touched Itachi. He accepted the offer and shook the hot hand of his new friend. "Nice to meet you," Itachi smiled at Shisui. Itachi looked at the beaming guy and was surprised that he had accepted this strange familiar shinobi. "What do adults do so late at night?" Itachi asked his only friend. Shisui, looking at the distant stone faces of Hokage, smiled with the tips of his lips. They were sitting on a cliff outside the village. No one knew about this place except them. A river flowed under a steep cliff. It flowed out from behind the Hokage monument and, writhing, ran away from the village. Near Itachi and Shisui, the current became deeper and faster than at its starting point near the village. "I, Genin," replied Shisui, looking into the distance. He turned to the hushed Itachi and continued gently. "So I go to an adult meeting." "Ah." They meet regularly at the Naka temple. Itachi wanted to ask what Shisui meant, but he was scared and couldn't utter a sound. Shisui looked down. "It's better for you not to know about it yet." Itachi stared anxiously at his friend, who looked away. The tense atmosphere prevailing in the clan. Let it turn out to be just a guess, Itachi thought over and over again. Itachi held out his name to a brunette sitting next to him on a thick branch of a lonely tree. "You're sitting there with a stony face again. What are you thinking about this time?" Shisui leaned towards Itachi with the intention of seeing at least some answer to his question. The named one shuddered slightly, coming out of his trance, and turned his head to the right to meet the expectant gaze of his friend. "Oh, nothing." It was simple, but he was immediately interrupted. "Yes, stop thinking about some philosophical topics of your own. Come back to reality. He's the best. Look at how the guys are fighting." Shisuya straightened his left arm and pointed at the 2 guys with a smile on his face. "Both are blonde." The eldest son of the clan head followed his gaze and looked in the indicated direction. However, it seems that the brunette who brought his friend out of his thoughts asked us with some pride and joy. Itachi remained silent, watching the fight. After a minute of silence, he allowed himself a slight smile, and on one exhale with warmth in his voice said, "Yes. It looks like they threw shurikens at each other. They collided in the air and flew off in a random direction." Neither Naruto nor Shin noticed where. Friends, although they could already be safely called non-blood brothers, had already jumped on each other, and the distance between them was rapidly shrinking. Their battle cries merged. They collided in the air, locked in a fight, and collapsed to the ground. Uzumaki was the first to jump to his feet and hit. Shin, still leaning on one knee, instantly raised his hand and blocked the attack. The field of vision swung firm, a powerful blow. He saw his friend quickly folding the seals. The element of fire, the great fireball, the blonde exclaimed, his very first rescued technique, which was taught to him by touch. A huge ball of flame burst out of his mouth. Looking into the oncoming wall of flames, Shin smiled with the tips of his lips, as expected from Naruto. It's not the first time he's been fighting with him, trying to find his weaknesses and win. But every time we find a weak spot, it turns out to be false. Jinchuriki liked to confuse him and trap him once again. That is why Shin has never defeated him in sparring. But today he will definitely win. My heart was pounding. He caught himself thinking that among the entire clan, only Itachi and Shisui, the best, could create a fireball of this size. But now Naruto has also joined them, constantly improving the quality of the equipment he uses. He won't have time to counterattack, he won't have time to defend either. A direct hit won't work, Uzumaki suddenly exclaimed. Blue-Eyed not only trained with him, but also taught his non-blood brother what he knows himself. After all, Ashen wants to enter the root of the Anbu. And this requires knowledge, strength, and experience. A giant ball of fire burned Shin to the ground, but when the ball dissipated, there was only a singed piece of wood. Body replacement technique. The real Shin meanwhile ran up to Naruto from behind. He felt the presence from behind, but did not have time to turn around. A kunai was put to the back of his head. You are defeated, the blonde man blurted out with joy and pride for himself, but when he saw the smirk on the opponent's face, he immediately tensed up. Be careful during the fight. You're not the only one who can use a substitute. With these words, there was a bang, and the guy standing in front of the boy with the kunai dissipated into a cloud of smoke. Damn, I forgot, the Shifu said with despair, with a kunai blade pressed to his Adam's apple. I won, said the blonde man, putting his weapon in a pouch hanging on his belt behind his back. Aha, Shin stretched out with sadness and smiled a little from the corner of his lips, but Naruto didn't even use Fuinjutsu seals. But next time I'm going to beat you anyway. You'll see. The blonde man energetically bent his right arm into his elbows and squeezed his palm into a fist. The old sadness as it happened. Yeah, you first learn the techniques harder and catch up with me, and then talk about your victory. Uzumaki happily smiled warmly. Do not doubt, I will quickly catch up with you and learn new techniques, much stronger than yours, and I will win you in the next sparring. I can't wait, Jinchuriki laughed after his words. After hearing a quiet crushed sound on the left, landing from the jump, turned his head in that direction. Well, Itachi. Shisui, did you like our fight? He asked the two older dark-haired men who had jumped off a tree branch they had planted. Yeah, of course, I liked it, but the ending is generally cool. I even thought that Shin would defeat you, and the way you attacked him with a kunami with a fishing line attached to them. It's immediately obvious that Itachi trained you. So after all, he asked Shisuyu a rhetorical question at the same time, lightly nudging a friend standing next to him with his elbow. Itachi, with a little shush, threw a short aha, after which he looked at Naruto, looking at them with Shisui, with sparks of excitement and anticipation in his eyes. Now you will fight against me. He stretched his right arm forward and pricked them. You promised. Both Uchiha awkwardly smiled, after which, what Shin said while scratching his head. You see, we have a mission here. A mission. The blonde man immediately became indignant and frowned. But you promised, he understood perfectly well that the time of distribution of missions does not depend on these two. And even though both serve in the root of the Anbu, Naruto, we really didn't expect that Danzo would call us this morning and give us a mission. Itachi has already said guiltily. Uzumaki just sighed in resignation. And what else to take from them? It's not their fault. And how much did you decide to move on to a more relevant topic of Jinchuriki? We are given a maximum of 2 weeks, the future heir of the Uchiha clan answered him. I see, but where? Far away, Maybe they will tell you something after all. Itachi only smiled warmly at this and, ruffling the blue-eyed man's hair, replied, Naruto, you know very well that we are forbidden to tell the details of our mission, including where we are going and for what purpose. Damn, I thought you'd get caught. Saying that, the boy sweetly puffed out his left cheek. It wasn't the first time he had done this, and once they almost blabbed, but they bit their tongue in time. Shisui and Shin, who were watching this, began to giggle in a stifled manner. After them, Tachi and Naruto began to giggle, after which joyful and cheerful laughter spread throughout the training ground. Having finished laughing, the guys said goodbye to the elders, and, having forced them to promise about their participation. In the next training battle, they were left standing alone at the training ground, looking at the place where the Uchiha had just disappeared with the help of Shumshin. And now what? Do we continue training or go home? I asked Shin of a quiet friend. No, neither one nor the other, the blond man answered him, almost seated from some idea of his own. Ashen had no doubt that he was up to something. Ruzu to paint the faces of Hokage. No. Steal apples and pears from Ayami-sama's garden. No. Go to the cemetery at night and scare the guys looking for ghosts and evil spirits. No, I didn't guess right again. Well, I don't even know. Tie tin cans with candy wrappers to the tail of the mistress's cat. Hanaka? No, that's it. I don't know what else could have come to your mind. Tell me already, huh? Well, after that, Naruto looked at the sun and nodded something. Looked at the interlocutor again exactly in the direction of the big eastern gate. What are you up to? You know he won't let us through so late. Don't be afraid, everything will be fine. Take more of the main equipment with you. Well, and some food. He won't miss us for sure. Just do what I say and leave the rest to me. Asterisk is a heavy exhalation, asterisk is good. See you tonight then. Yeah, bye. And don't let the Saiyans know anything. Yeah, bye. The landfill instantly emptied. Not far from the big eastern gate, a blond man was standing and waiting for his non-blood brother. I didn't have to wait long. Hello there. Have you been waiting long? The blonde Jinchuriki asked. No, he came here recently. Then let's go, aha, just give me your stuff first. I'll seal them up, it'll be much easier that way. With these words, Naruto approached Shin and, taking his right hand, put a seal on his wrist. Now, if you want to get something or seal it, just direct the chakra to the seal and imagine the object. Then how it is sealed or printed. Try it. Shin nodded and, quickly realizing what was going on, sealed his things. He obeyed Uzumaki, despite the fact that he was his youngest. When he finished completely blonde, he asked, and how are we going to leave Kanaka? There's security there. Anyway, where are we going? We're going to explore something that I noticed in the Forest of Death. The blue-eyed man spoke in a completely ordinary tone. It seemed that it was ordinary for him. The situation. Where is the Forest of Death? This is the first I've heard of him. As he spoke, he was adjusting his fingerless protective gloves, and there are also pouches for weapons everywhere. Training Ground 44. Does that give you something? The blond man answered casually, after which he was able to contemplate the surprised face of his friend. Training Ground 44. Are you crazy? It's the same. Yeah, they usually conduct a Chunin exam there. Well, let's go. With these words, he, as if nothing had happened, walked along the wall, moving away from the entrance gate. Where are you going? A puzzled Shin asked. Just follow me. I have a loophole there, Naruto calmly answered him, continuing to walk on. The blonde one sighed in resignation and followed his guide. Oh, and he doesn't like it all. So how are we going to climb over this fence with a wire? There's a barrier. I know what a barrier is without you, the blonde man muttered, pushing the fence with wire with his gaze. So, the blonde one already wanted to offer to return. No, it's not because he's scared or scared. He just has a strange feeling. A premonition may well be. Or it's still fear, so we will bypass this barrier. How do you imagine it? Shin was really interested in how Uzumaki decided to bypass the dome-shaped barrier. they'll just go back to the beginning. You know that barriers are put in the form of a hemisphere, a half-cube, or a half-parallelepiped. What is a semi-parallelepiped? It doesn't matter. It is important that the floor. I mean, the blonde one was older, but still. I still didn't understand what my friend wanted to convey to him. Well, Yanshariki took one of the sticks from the ground, of which there were many here, after which he began to draw on sandy-earthy soil. Look, you see, I see, Shin nodded his head, after which his gaze became more meaningful. You didn't draw the underside in all three figures. Yes, because there isn't one. In our case, of course, you want to pass under the barrier from below. Do you have the elements of the earth? I thought you only had Futon and Kato. Well, actually I'm in. I own the land, but I have no kinship with it. So the technicians, if they come out, are very weak. Any genin who owns the earth element does even better. Oh well. Okay, stop. If you have such a bad command of this element, and I don't own it at all, then how do we get through from below? Or do you want to suggest that I dig in? Do you have any idea how deep it can be? We can't do it in a week, but you want it overnight. And I didn't say anything about the element of the earth and the excavation. The blonde man said in a serious voice, "We will go through a ready-made tunnel." Shin helped out his eyes at this statement. Where did he find this tunnel? And when? It turns out that he had been planning this sortie for a long time. And where is he? Come on, I'll show you, it's not far. Just be careful, there are traps here. After these words, Naruto rushed somewhere along the fence. Shin followed him. You have arranged some of them are not me. Hearing these words, the blonde man involuntarily swallowed. It turns out that there may well be someone else here. And it's not a fact that this someone will be kind and not an enemy. It's dark, damp, smells bad, disgusting. These were the first sensations when the guys went down into some kind of hatch. Shin has already scolded himself several times that he decided to go with Uzumaki and did not dissuade him from this venture. But nothing can be turned back, and it is necessary to retreat. Back, it's a shame not to leave my brother alone. Naruto jumped down the stairs and there was a splash. It looks like there is water or liquid mud. From such thoughts, the white-eyed involuntarily shuddered. Brr, and it's dark as hell. I wonder if Naruto took it with him. However, Shin hastened to voice the last thought immediately, to which he received the answer. No, he did not take it. But I have light sticks. The blonde man didn't need the light to understand that the blonde was scratching the back of his head guiltily. Jinchuriki fell silent, but feeling a hole being burned behind his gaze, he hurried to justify himself. It's just that you understand, I spent all the money, and Hiruzen will not bring a new benefit soon. And the sticks shine well, we have enough of them anyway. And anyway, get down from there. Everything is fine here. Once again, he sighed in resignation. And having drilled the darkness with a dissatisfied and condemning look, Shin jumped down the stairs. And landed next to the mastermind of all this. There will be no turning back. How long have they been going like this? Half an hour, 2. Shin had already stopped understanding the sense of time. It's useless to dissuade Uzumaki from anyone. The blonde one has long understood this. He could only hope that Naruto, not finding anything interesting, would abandon his idea. And they would go to their training ground or the roof of some house and admire the starry world. Sky, while eating their supplies and discussing something. During his thoughts, he did not notice how the guidebook stopped, and Shin, without having time to react, crashed into him. Fortunately, the blue-eyed man resisted with the help of the chakra in his legs, and at the same time, did not let him fall. Falling wet, at best in rancid water, did not suit him. Thank you, Shin muttered to his savior, and then asked why he stopped. The voice was already rather sluggish. It is unknown how long they had gone like that. We're here. The answer was immediately given to him. Yes, all the fatigue was blown away like the wind, and where is the way out? I don't see him. The ward Dan found squinting his eyes and looking into the darkness, as well as waving his wand, which the blonde gave him. Look up. The boy also said with a note of joy, raising a light stick over his head. Wow. That's all Shin could squeeze out of himself. There was a hole in the ceiling, and through it you could see a small light. Fire from a torch or a lantern. But what about that? And it can do that here. To light that there is no one to light them. Unless, of course, the blonde one decided not to think about what would happen if someone caught them. So, are we jumping or shunshin? Shunshik. Lightning fast response. Okay, I'm waiting for you upstairs. With that, his friend disappeared. Me too, the guy said into the void, and also disappeared. They found themselves in some kind of room, but it was no longer underground. That's just where they still wanted to know. We are in the central tower, in the basement. In the central tower. Yes, remember, I told you that the second stage of the Chunin exam usually takes place here. So this is where the participants who have passed it come. How do you know that? You're not even a genie. As he spoke, Shin followed Uzumaki up the stairs. Ha, don't forget that I've been able to read since childhood and often stayed in Hokage's office when I was little. And underestimation by adults always plays into my hands. Now I understand why you have such a mask. It's a good thing you don't wear it with us. Huh. And why? He rested his head questioningly on his shoulder, then looked at Belobrusev. Well, she's too noisy. No offense, but that's the way it is. Ha ha ha, yes I know, that's how it should be. This is a perfect mask without a single flaw, the blonde man said with pride. Sometimes it seems to me that you are holding the second one under it, and now you are walking in it, suddenly, for no reason. The boy walking behind Naruto forcefully voiced his thoughts. To be honest, he was surprised by what he said. You've just been underground in the dark for too long. Natural thoughts will be of the same nature. But we're almost there. Now let's go for a little run through the evening forest. And then, is that not all? Shin stopped in shock. Do they really need to go into the forest as well? Just great. There's nothing more to say. Naruto strangled, either grunted, or let out a laugh, after which he said, Let's go. It's not far. Only 1.5 kilometers, approximately. The keyword is approximately. Couldn't resist hitting the tires. Don't forget we still have to go back. If anything, we'll spend the night here. And you touch Shisui, you'll still be back in at least 5 days. What makes you think that? 2 weeks. I've known them longer than you. Hence the conclusion. Both guys crossed a large empty hall with balconies on the second floor and a huge green statue near the wall. Shin involuntarily stopped and looked at her. It was already dark enough, and there were no windows. Moonlight came through the door that Naruto opened. The moon is already shining with might and main, everyone is asleep. And we're all hanging around somewhere, Danza's ward thought with annoyance, after which he ran to Uzumaki, who was already tired of waiting and going out on the street. Hey, wait for me. Quickly catching up with his friend, Shin noticed how he began to look at the starry sky, with a white disk of the moon. Beautiful? Quietly, almost in a whisper. Naruto only nodded weakly at this and continued to admire the heavens. And the blonde one looked into his crystal blue eyes. The stars were reflected in them now. The cool late evening wind played with the boy's hair. I just wanted to sit down, but it's better to lie down on the grass and do nothing, just look at the starry sky. And gradually sink into sleep. Let's go, before that thoughtful blue eyes looked at Shin. And yes, even if it was a good respite, but the white-eyed man felt even more tired and drowsy. In the morning, training with Sai and Danza, then training with Uchiha and Naruto, after which sparring with the latter and now it's also a sortie. Now we have to run 1.5 kilometers through the trees. I hope we won't meet the local creatures, he nodded warily to his necroblood brother. And he led him into the thicket of this terrible, rotten in places, teeming with various creatures. Dark scary forest. Now both guys are standing near one of the many trees, and looking at the hatch with a snake pattern on the lid. That's what I was talking about. I accidentally bumped into him while walking, Naruto said, drilling the named object with his gaze. Shin just rolled his eyes at this. He is already used to the fact that Uzumaki walks in several dubious and life-threatening places. With these thoughts, he walked busily to the hatch. Warily sat down on its lid. What are you doing? Interestingly, this is a rhetorical question. I'm tired. If we don't rest now, then I will refuse to go anywhere on my own. Naruto looked with mild surprise at his friend sprawled on the hatch cover, then slapped his palm on the floor. Exactly, I completely forgot. Now wait, he took out 2 soldier pills from his seal, the same ones that Sakura cooked in the anime, but tasteless. In fact, they quickly restore strength and chakra. I stole a kimmich from them. At the last phrase, the blonde received a disapproving look, which, however, he successfully ignored. Having eaten a soldier's pill without any questions, the guys were already sitting together on the roof of the hatch and resting, looking at the starry sky. Shin once again noticed how much the blonde was changing, looking at the stars. There was a deep thoughtfulness in his crystal blue eyes, and just the sea was sad. Mixed with sadness, deciding that 10 minutes of rest should have been enough, they got up from their usual place, and Naruto, taking out some kind of his homemade seal, attached it to the hatch cover, passed the chakra through it, and pulled the lid. At myself. The lid gave way easily with relative ease. Go underground again. Are we some kind of worms? Shin spoke out in his heart, looking at how his younger non-blood brother, deciding not to pull, jumped straight into the hatch. In response, he heard a ringing laugh mixed with an echo coming from him. It's even a little creepy. Thinking so, the blonde also decided to jump into the hatch after the blonde. The whole world was plunged into darkness. 2 non-blood brothers were walking along an underground corridor. The walls, as well as the floor and ceiling, were made of stone. There were the same scale-like snake drawings everywhere. Torches hung on the wall at an even distance from each other. The fire crackled a little, and so, silence. Both were afraid to make any sound. But they were not going to retreat either. After all, someone had to light all these torches. So, after all, there is someone here. That's just not the fact that this someone will turn out to be a friend, not an enemy. Quietly stepping on the stone floor and looking at the torches and drawings on the walls, the guys lost track of time. It seemed like they had been walking for ages. The corridor was replaced by another corridor, and that, in turn, smoothly flowed into the next one. Could they walk in circles? Definitely not. After all, if they had been walking in circles, they would have already run into a moon pillar because they left the lid open. This could have gone on for a long time if one of the plates, which Naruto stepped on in front of him, suddenly would not have moved a little down into the floor. And it began. Kuna and Shinbones suddenly began to fly out of the walls, and the guys had to break a small distance between them, into a sick, big one, and fight off weapons. Shin stepped on the next trap. Snakes, snakes, snakes again. A lot of snakes began to come out of literally nowhere, and there were more and more of them. The weapons never stopped flying like a wall at the intruders. It was tacitly decided to retreat. Yanshariki, since he was already badly battered by the weapon he was fighting off, but still it hurt him. It's the same story with the tire. The worst part was that the distance between them only increased. Shin was walking behind the blonde, and it was much easier for him to retreat. The first minus is to go ahead. Meanwhile, the snakes began to attack furiously, bloodlessly. Brothers and try to either strangle them, or something else. It doesn't matter, the main thing is that nothing good could be expected for the fair-haired. Snakes began to rapidly wrap around the guy's legs first, then the body, and then the hands. Naruto didn't let them do it. He, holding to kunai tightly in his hands, cut the creatures, glancing briefly at how things were going with Belobrusev. And things were bad for him. He could not dodge the hail of iron weapons flying at him at the same time, and at the same time. Cut the snakes that were trying to strangle him. Damn, we have to end this. Throwing the kunai, which fell to the floor with a metallic sound to the roaring snakes, the blonde man shouted, "The element of fire. The great fireball." The equipment flew straight at the creatures, and they began to burn alive. But that was definitely enough. It was not enough, as if by the law of meanness, the blue-eyed man, having made another backflip, stepped on another tile, which, creaking, moved to the floor. That's all we needed. The floor between the two friends fell down, there somewhere on the bottom presumably sizzled. Now there was no time to consider what was there. We need to fight off the snakes, somehow get to the tire and get out of here. An idea came to mind. His Fuinjutsu seals. In an instant, by printing them, attached to the rings on the handles by kunai. He began to throw his explosive weapon at the creatures that were circling them and rushing towards Uzumaki in a crowd. Cats! Naruto shouted, folding the hand seal. Powerful explosions were heard all along the corridor, in places where kunai were scattered. Naruto's explosive seals are much stronger than usual. Deciding that now was the right moment for the blonde to retreat, he was already preparing to jump over the cliff. But suddenly he felt a hellish pain in his neck on the left. Convulsively and unbelievingly, he looked at the source of the pain. A small snake was sitting on his left shoulder, biting Faith on his neck. There was a bleeding bite next to it. Naruto stared at the white reptile in shock. When? How? He hadn't even felt it. And then it hit him. It was his own fault that he didn't feel the thing on his shoulder bite her. Even in the first days of training with Itachi, Naruto learned to dull his own pain and then not to feel it at all, or not to pay attention. That's why he didn't feel any pain from all the wounds that Kunai Sinbona inflicted on him. My head started to hurt much more than during the last time of the fight. Jinchuriki himself felt a strong weakness and pain all over his body. The place was burning like hell from the bite. Everything swam and doubled before my eyes. We must urgently run before it's too late. With these thoughts, Naruto rushed to the cliff. The same plan kept repeating in my head. To run to the cliff, collect the chakra in my legs, push off and jump. Pick up the tires and run as far away from here as possible. And in short, to survive. Short, but clear. But in reality, everything is not as simple as in thoughts. The kunai had already stopped shooting, now only the Simbans were shooting. But the guy didn't pay attention to them. His path lay to the cliff when he was 5 meters away. Jinchuriki began to collect the chakra in his legs. His chakra didn't obey him. She seemed to be moving erratically and did not want to accumulate in one place. The chakra hearth seemed to be bubbling, if not boiling. It was a bad 3 meters. Will he be able to jump over? Will it fall there, into the darkness? But you can't stop with overclocking more chances. It's better to fall into a cliff and miraculously survive, with a lot of fractures, than to be eaten by these creatures, or what do snakes do with their prey? 1 meter deep breath, push on exhale, jump. Time seemed to have stopped. The sounds of metal and weapons, the sounds of battle, all faded into the background. My body was completely numb. He didn't make it. He's falling down somewhere. Before falling, he sees a tire that is already completely tired, which will fall without strength from second to second. Darkness. He falls and cuts the air with his body. Ringing in my ears. In the depths at the end of the cliff, something flashed. The spikes, however, are no longer important. It seemed like everything had become a dream. The nightmare is definitely him. And now he's going to fall. Naruto? Shin's voice hit his temples hard. The blonde one should take care of everything. To myself, and not about a friend who was poisoned by a snake and who is going to break any minute now. Strange, but the flight should only take a minute. That's what those old men's words meant. Time stops before death. It looks like he's about to experience it the hard way. I wonder if he will die instantly or if the thorn will enter his stomach and Uzumaki, hanging in this position, will slowly die. What kind of thoughts do not come to mind before death? Stop. He's really going to die now. Without giving himself an account of his actions, he miraculously printed and baked. There are 2 kunai on the brushes and threw them into the wall with all the remaining strength. Those stuck in it. The fishing line that was attached to both of them glittered. The fishing line passed through one sleeve of the jacket into the other and was behind the back of the Jinchuriki. The named one clung to it and flew quite a bit before the stuck kunai slipped down due to the fishing line and the weight of the blonde's body. The same one, almost hitting the wall, opened to more kunai and, holding them by the handles, forcefully stuck them into the wall. The same inertia together with the blue-eyed crawled down, but already at almost the very bottom, Uzumaki braked. My heart was beating wildly in my chest, my head was buzzing, my whole body was aching, the bite site was burning. The chakra was literally jumping all over my body. I'm alive, he croaked into the void. I was terribly sleepy, and I don't care what happens next. Don't sleep, don't sleep, don't sleep. Mentally, the guy tried to cheer himself up, still hanging over the cliff, and holding on to the handles of 2 kunai. He did not notice how he began to repeat it with his eyes already closed. I didn't notice that I was falling asleep. I didn't notice how my sweaty palms were slowly sliding over the handles. I didn't notice how I started repeating the words in my sleep. I didn't notice how his body completely weakened, and he began to fall, but fortunately, 2 whole lines held him, leaving several deep wounds on his back. I didn't notice how I hung on to them a little bit. And just before the final loss of consciousness, it flashed through my mind, it's my fault. And then, such a welcome and empty darkness, without pain, without bad thoughts, without screams, without anything. It's dark. Only a dim and cold neon light illuminates the room. But even so, it seems that the room is completely dark. Monitor screens, wires, various test tubes, and jars with pills and medicines. In separate boxes, there are various surgical instruments, including a functional needle, a stable with a turnet. Respirators are different. The ceiling, walls, and floor are made of stone, with an intricate wavy pattern on the tile. But the very first glance falls on huge glass capsules the size of a man's height. They stand along the walls. Inside them are various wires, a strange transparent liquid, and remnants from past experiments. It was in such an environment that a blue-eyed blonde man who was in one of the glass capsules regained consciousness. My head is buzzing. There is an unusual strong weakness in the body. My eyelids felt like lead. He can't even lift a finger right now. But where am I? What happened? I am alive. These were the first thoughts of Jinchuriki after his own awakening. Deciding to check that he really survived, the boy listened to his feelings. Yes, that's right. He's alive. He felt and heard every beat of his heart. He could feel his arms and legs. He also felt that he was, apparently, in a vertical, not horizontal position. It's strange, if I'm standing now, then why don't I feel the weight of my body? Maybe I was leaning against something, stuck in some crack in the ledge or... Naruto tried to scroll through the last memories in his head. Damn, my head is splitting. Recent events consisted of small, overlapping pieces and blurred in a different way. Before the eyes of Uzumaki, despite the strong desire to put everything in its place, the boy could not put together the whole picture in any way. Okay, now I need to figure out where I am and, if possible, ask for help. Although, it is unlikely that anyone else will be here. Most likely, you will have to get out yourself. Go ahead. Gathering his thoughts, Uzumaki took a deep breath and, exhaling sharply, opened his eyes and immediately narrowed them. It's strange, but such a familiar sunny and bright light did not hit my eyes. On the contrary, everything was somehow pale and blue-greenish. After blinking and opening his eyes again, Jinchuriki was somewhat puzzled and surprised. Everything literally swam before his eyes. And any silhouettes and any outlines of objects were blurred. Naruto couldn't focus his eyes in any way. And his eyes stung a little, but it was very tolerable when compared with his condition. He was terribly sleepy, despite the fact that he felt as if he had jumped into a crystal-clear lake with icy water. But he was in no hurry to surface and sank deeper and deeper. Deeper blowing vortices of air bubbles that quickly rose and flew up. Stop. Bubbles. What kind of bubbles? Only now the boy noticed that every time he exhales air, small bubbles come out of his mouth and nose, rising quickly. It turns out that he really is in the water, but he's going to suffocate. His heart began to pound wildly in his chest, and Uzumaki himself was trying to figure out where the hell he was. So calm, Naruto. The main thing is to calm down. You're still alive and able to breathe air. Right. After all, paradise is not a lake with some cold water, right? That's right, if it's not hell, of course. But hell is a hot and burning fire. I'm sure of it, yeah. He himself understood that he was just trying to analyze somehow, and to explain the situation for himself, but the panic only grew more and more. Okay, we need to calm down. It's okay. I'm alive, so all is not lost yet. Now I will calm down and analyze the situation thoroughly, and after that I will do something. Although it was difficult, but now it was necessary to keep cool and calm. You can't do anything without understanding what happened. Davin, Naruto, remember what happened at first. What happened first, and when did it even happen? But it was permissible yesterday. So, yesterday Shin and I sparred with each other. As a result, Shin lost again. Then Uzumaki almost tried to get yesterday's memories out of his head with forceps. Wow, this is harder than I thought. All right, then we are. Yeah. Itachi and Shisui were also present at our training and watched our fight. He felt like a hero who had accomplished a feat, but it was just a small part of recent events. And the blonde understood it perfectly. Then both Uchiha went on a mission, and Nizen and I decided to go to the Forest of Death. Right now, Naruto was just rejoicing inside. Then it was easy to think that something had gone wrong, and now he was here. It remains only to recall the details, and that's it. But the joyful mood passed as quickly as it appeared. Shin, where is he? How is he? Is he alive at all? These questions made Jinchuriki feel cold all over her body. He had completely forgotten about the tire. What if he's in danger now? And if now he is bleeding, flowing from numerous wounds, and Naruto, his non-blood brother, remembered about him only now. Well done, what else can I say, but all is not lost yet. Perhaps Shin is still alive. It is only necessary. Get out as soon as possible. Despite the whole attitude of the boy's body, she did not want him at all. Obey. What can I say? He then opened his eyes and remembered that it was possible with great difficulty. But Naruto wouldn't be Uzumaki if he dropped his hands now. Now he was in the fetal position, and all he had to do was straighten and stretch out his arm, bent forward at the elbows. He didn't know how, and yet he managed to do this action. The palm clung to something in its structure similar to glass. The surface of this item was smooth and cold, as well as transparent. There can be no mistake. This is definitely glass. That's just why it's here and where the hell he is. The thought process was interrupted by two people who entered and appeared in his field of vision. Jinchuriki was afraid to move and seemed to have stopped breathing. It looks like your experiment has already woken up. Speaking of which, this guy, who looks 19 to 20 years old, began typing something on the keyboard. The working capacity of the brain is already noticeably visible on the screen. He pointed his finger at the screen with some data that Naruto could not see, however, as well as the visitors themselves. The blonde man could distinguish the general features of their silhouette, but the body has not yet returned to normal after yesterday's cell transplant. After a short pause, the guy continued, "What do you want Arakamaru to do herself?" With these words, the questioner turned to the dark-haired man standing next to him, looking like 25 to 36. 6 years old, according to the blue-eyed one. The named one only grinned and licked his lips with a sweet and soft voice hissed. "Let him sleep, as if cut, let him rest. His body should come back to normal soon," firm the intonation and the meaning of the words themselves. Uzumaki just shuddered at the words he said. The man himself left the room with a smooth gait. There is Arakamaru herself, having said this, as if he adjusted his glasses. Naruto realized this by the bright glare on his face near his eyes and, turning back to the computer, began to do something again. Fast typing. The experiment itself had a complete mess in its head. It was not enough for him to have past thoughts, which he barely and somehow more or less sorted out on the shelves, so also new ones. A whole mountain appeared. Who are Tikabuta and Arakamaru? Why did the latter call it his experiment? What was yesterday's cell transplant? And most importantly, whose? How did he even get here? Where's Shin? Is it really possible to get out of here? Old Man 3 had already noticed the absence of a vessel for the Nine-Tailed and sent a search team. And you have a very stormy brain activity, Naruto-kun. The named one already shuddered. Didn't you hear what Arakamaru-sama said? You need to sleep now. With these words, it was as if he walked up to a nearby table and took some kind of test tube from it, after which he went to Kazumaki, but not reaching it, climbed up an iron ladder attached to the flask, and after turning and twisting something, poured the contents of the test tube into it. Having done his machinations, the guy climbed down the stairs. Now try to fall asleep and not resist the action of the medicine. Having said that, he seemed to adjust his glasses again and, meeting the prisoner's gaze, said, "See you later, Naruto-kun. I hope you won't disappoint Arakimaru yourself." A cheeky grin appeared on the guy's face, which Naruto saw even with such a clouded one. At the moment, vision. There were muffled footsteps, and it became quiet again. The blonde was in no way going to obey these two and was already thinking about how to escape. He didn't notice how the air had acquired the smell of medicine. That's why he didn't notice how slowly he closed his eyes and fell asleep. And yet, where I got to was the last thought before Yanshinriki passed out. Unlike his first awakening, the second one was calmer or something. The boy did not feel mega tired. It can be said that yesterday he felt as if he had been arguing all day with his non-blood brothers in turn. And when he completely collapsed, the training was over. Now Naruto just felt some kind of laziness. He could move his arms, legs, and head, but a strange feeling of laziness hindered him. The muscles, unlike the next day after training, did not ache. So it's either nine-tailed or not. He doesn't even want to think about any cells transplanted into him. Why did the blonde man think they were transplanted into him? Yes, it's very simple. One would have to be a naive fool not to understand this. Although there was a small hope that he had invented all this for himself and no cells were transplanted into him, it was still hidden deep in his heart. After all, he is clearly not a single experiment. Maybe they didn't do anything wrong to him at all. Maybe they want to help him on the contrary. Maybe when he and Shin fell into that trap, although, rather, traps, Uzumaki was severely injured. And these two decided to help him. Complete nonsense, but still. So stop. Shin, he was also injured and is here somewhere. Due to the fact that he had several yesterday, the incapacitated condition of the boy did not notice him. And we also need to somehow try to talk to this, as if that was the name of that bespectacled man. Of course, he is unlikely to let him go and show him where the tire is, but outside. And without his help, he can find his friend. After considering everything and weighing all the pros and cons of Blue-Eyed, I decided to act. After all, this Yanshinriki seemed to call a tail or a tail. At first he wanted to call a dog because he literally obeys any order. His master and runs after him with a tail, but still threw this option aside because the tail sounds much better and suitable. He did not observe. Gathering all his strength and will into a fist, the boy spread his hands apart and began to feel the glass with them. The result was obvious. He was in a huge capsule. Naruto didn't see any other option. And he had a good imagination. So, how does he get out of here? He was in a so-called glass cylinder. And the cylinder, like any three-dimensional figure, has something. That's right, the top side and the bottom. The bottom one is immediately swept away because there's no need to even try to get out, and it's stupid. And here's the top one. They had to put him here somehow. Uzumaki raised his head and looked up. He saw a manhole cover, firm which wires stretched, attached to the kid's body. Now this paint needs to be opened somehow. That's just how. Well, he doesn't have much choice. He is simply unable to use the techniques now, so it remains to do everything with his bare hands. Literally naked. With a resigned sigh, the blonde swam up to the lid and, raising his hands, began to press on it. What else could he do? He is not stupid and understands that if at least one wire has flown out, it will not be very good. Especially if it is the one that is the thickest and connected to his oxygen mask. But the lid wouldn't open, and that was no wonder. It probably opens from the top, from the outside, but not from the bottom, from the inside. And now what? After trying to exert even more strength, while getting the same result, Yanshinriki stopped doing this pointless activity. Maybe he can still try to talk to Ponytail, but he still hasn't come, and Blue-Eyed has long since woken up. Naruto was in conflicting feelings. On the one hand, he wanted to come and talk to him, on the other, as if he could, just like that one. Oh yes, Arakimaru, so, as if like Arakimaru, they can be enemies, and not friends at all. Who even knows what's going on in their minds between the two of them? But he wasn't going to sit idly by the Uzumaki either. He doesn't want to live here for the next eternity, but he also can't get out of here. And there is no need to hope for outside help. Itachi and Shisui will return back to the village only in a week, and that's not a fact. Old Man 3 is unlikely to do anything now. Well, the village's weapons are gone, so what? He won't notice the loss right away, but only in a day or two. 2.3. Shin, on the other hand, does not know where or if he is alive at all. But Naruto believed that his non-blood brother was alive. He couldn't think of anything else. And finally, the long-awaited guests entered the room. Greetings to you, Naruto-kun. How are you? Do you feel any discomfort? The long-haired man hissed softly and with a strained smile, except that I am in a flask. And that I am kept in complete ignorance. And so nothing, the boy replied with mental sarcasm. Meanwhile, the tail came back to the computer screen. And he began to look at the prisoner's condition. The prisoner himself only now noticed that his vision had cleared, although it was still somewhat cloudy. But this is not surprising. He was inside the flask in some kind of transparent liquid, most likely in water. The state of the experiment. It stabilized during the day. The brain can function freely. I think Naruto-kun is already able to talk. The white-haired man made his verdict while adjusting his glasses. Most likely it's just a habit. Okay, like kun. It's really amazing that his body accepted and did not repel the cells. In addition, he did not even have a fever and any painful attacks, as was the case with the rest of the specimens. Arakimaru grimaced a little at the last words. A couple of years ago, Snake Sanin conducted a similar experiment. By implanting the cells of the first Hokage Hashiram Senju into the human body, but his teacher Hiruzen found out about it and expelled him instead of killing him. It was an obvious mistake of the old man, which gave Arakimaru a chance to live and continue to seek immortality further. The disciple of the third hurried to take advantage of this chance. And now he has his personal hidden laboratories all over the world in which he conducts his experiments. And the one with the cells of Hashirama Arakimaru abandoned because none of his specimens survived after transplantation. And then, the long-haired one knew who the boy in front of him was, Kanahi's weapon, a vessel for the nine-tailed one. As well as the son of the yellow lightning leaf, and the chemistry of the Uzumaki clan, the bloody Habanura. To say that Arakimaru was certainly lucky, he was just stunningly lucky. Moreover, the copy itself came into his hands, along with some other white-haired boy. 2 copies at once. Of course, the condition of the second one desired the best, but the first one had just a wonderful regeneration. Because of the strongest Kabinu yogi sealed in it. As if Kun, follow his condition a little more, if by the middle of this day, it will remain the same or improve, then you know what to do. With these words, Arakimaru licked his lips a little, and with a slight smile, smoothly walked to the exit of the room. But he did not have time to go to 2 meters like. Naruto was angry. Very angry. Not only did he not understand where he was and what, properly speaking, was going on, but his opinion was of absolutely no interest to anyone. But it's okay, but the fact that he was considered nothing more than an experiment was just infuriating. The blood involuntarily began to boil in his veins, but he needs to calm down because he stopped. Only now, he noticed standing not far from him, the same flask in which he is, and in the flask. Hugging his knees with his hands, and falling asleep in the fetal position, there was Bilovolos. A boy just like him, breathing through an oxygen mask, and wrapped in various wires. It was Shin, those things. Right now, Naruto felt a sharp surge of rage and hatred for these two. Now he didn't even think about what those might be for him. Friends. Okay, he is a Jinchuriki and quite an interesting specimen. Let them do what they want with it, but they don't dare touch the tire. Jinchuriki slightly squeezed his eyes shut and clenched his hands into fists. His body seemed to be filled with energy, strength overflowed him. Nails and fangs have become sharper, and the stripes on the cheeks are grazier. Now he won't give up without a fight. His and Shin's lives are at stake. He doesn't care that in front of him is a Snake Sanin, who is at least 3 times stronger than him, and with him is the right hand of Richumaru. He will fight to the end, but he will not surrender alive. Even if he died, it would be better than rotting here and doing nothing to save them. Let me out. The voice was pitiful, but despite this, there was a real threat behind it. Brunette turned around to face his experiment with a nine-tailed one. Interesting, let me out. Now the voice was more confident, and it was clearly audible, despite the oxygen mask. And the fact that the guy is in a flask with water, as if, unlike Arakimaru, he tensed up. Although he understood that it was the vessel for the nine-tailed one in front of him now, and not himself. The assistant of the third disciple could not underestimate the boy. Why are you so angry, Naruto-ku? We didn't do anything wrong to you, on the contrary. I have given you even more power, and you should thank me for that. And if you're worried about where you are, then you don't have to worry. You are where you will be respected, and the snake stopped. What is it? This is the first time I see this. To say that Sanin was surprised is to say nothing. He was very surprised. His experiment due to cell transplantation has now become much stronger. But now he is unlikely to be able to use the power given to him. You have to get used to it and learn. Plus, what he was seeing now was clearly not Hashirama's power, but something else. No, he's not licking, but eyes. The eyelids slowly lifted, opening the boy's eyes. There was anger in them, but with it coldness. The snake was sure that he was ready to kill them right now, and would not sympathize with them, or show compassion or mercy. No, it wasn't Sheringham. Nebukugan. It was something else, although it vaguely resembled the family eyes of Hugh. Again, comparing these two pairs of eyes was at least strange and stupid. They were completely different from each other. But if it's not Sheringham and Nebukugan, then what? I didn't have time. The long-haired man finished his thought process as Yanshariki hit the glass with all his might, which in turn was shattered into pieces. And small pieces of glass fell to the floor, thereby opening the passage to the gushing water. The liquid quickly flooded the laboratory floor. But not above the foot, because the room was not small. The boy himself began to exit the capsule with slow movements, ignoring the wires and the oxygen mask. Stepping over a small threshold of glass, Naruto stepped, with his bare foot on the floor with water and sharp glasses. They left him uncomfortable, and like sand in the water, they began to spin, especially small pieces. But it seemed that the guy did not notice it at all. After taking the second step, the boy was free, and slowly began to move towards the flask with his companion. The wires were stretched, and with each step they took, they detached themselves from the former blonde, causing him pain. After all, there was a needle at the end of almost every wire. Ask why the former blonde. The answer is simple. His hair turned white as snow. The same thing happened to his skin. What's going on with him? Where did he get this power from? This is clearly not the Ninetales or the influence of the cells of the first, and certainly not the strength of the Uzumaki clan. 9 were red-haired. But what is it then? The only assumption is that this is the strength of the Namikaze clan, but did this clan have any such power at all? After all, he was so small that he was completely destroyed because of his weakness. And a force that was slightly above the civilian level of chakra control. Damn, for the first time in all this time, I don't know what to do. After all, I just can't kill such perfection. After all, it turns out to be a valuable exhibit. I need to know what kind of power it is. Futon, give Toppa, Arakimaru created a large jet of air and directed it at Naruto, who quickly dodged. Even too fast for his age. And you're pretty fast. The snake praised the boy, however, he ignored him and continued on his way. Then, Blue Teyashu, snakes escaped from the sleeves of the brunette, who began to attack Uzumaki in order to stop him. Bellavalisi reacted to this instantly. The great fireball is rolled. Tom Thumb folded the seals and sent his equipment to the snake and, running up to the surgical table, quickly took the first operating knife from the box of the box, which he began to fend off the unburned creatures. Or the boy already had one. Such a speed that it is unlikely, or the speed was added in this strange mode and the fireball was quite powerful. It is unlikely that Genin could have done this, analyzed the actions of the experiment of Sanya. Naruto, having finished with the snakes, instead of continuing on his way, decided to go to attack, and not at Arakamaru, but at Kabut, who was too suspiciously quiet in the line. Naruto shouted this, folded his arms on his chest with a cross, concentrated the wind chakra, and waved his right hand. And with his left hand attacked Kabuto with two powerful air waves. Arakamaru's assistant was able to avoid an unexpected attack even if he was slightly hurt. But the sausage behind him was unlucky, and the glass broke. Fire and air. Two wonderful elements, and he already owns them. I want to know more about you, Naruto-kun. With these thoughts, Arakamaru folded the seals and, creating his snake, hissed Shuriken Kagebunshin Nujutsu and literally began to shoot shurikens out of his mouth into Naruto, which then began to multiply. Blade Vortex Technique. That was the answer. Jinchuriki. He poured the wind chakra into the scalpel and, waving it, created several air waves that fought off the Requena. But without waiting for a new attack, he folded the seals and shouted, Vacuum Ball Technique. The ball from the air rushed at Arakamaru and Kabuto while expanding and becoming more and more in its size. Both men disappeared into the ground thanks to the technique of hiding in the surface. Uzumaki, taking advantage of the time he had played, carried their tire, punched the flask with all his might, from which water gushed out. Quickly taking the body of his non-blood brother, he was about to escape when snakes rushed at him again as a cover and, as if with a chakra blade in his hand, the elements of wind, the vacuum wave technique, and the newly created vacuum waves attacked the opponents. The tail managed to dodge again, but received a more severe wound. Meanwhile, Naruto had almost reached the exit with Shin, and, turning around, whispered, Elements of wind, vacuum bullets. He began to shoot clots of air at both men, after which, finally, using the technique of the great fireball, he ran away. Arakamaru-sama was the right-hand man of one of the legendary trinity of Sanins. Nothing like cut. No need to catch up with him. But Arakamaru-sama, he was at a loss. We'll be watching him from afar. Now he is too small and naive. But after a while, I'm sure he'll need my strength, Arakamaru said with a sly smile, brushing himself off a little. But you didn't even put your damn seal on it. I think we can do without it, especially since I have time to put it on. And now Sanin silently headed for the exit, and already on the threshold continued, Clean up here, as if coup. With these words, he left, leaving his student alone to clean up the destroyed laboratory. The named one, after looking around, sighed heavily and mumbled mournfully to himself. There is Arakamaru herself. He was standing in a puddle of water with glass fragments. Most of the flasks were broken, and the instruments for the operation were scattered. Adjusting his glasses, the guy started cleaning. Naruto ran with all his might without looking back. He was very, very lucky, and now he needs to get out of here as soon as possible, with an unconscious comrade in his arms. Bruises from small wounds left after needles at the ends of wires, blood flowed in thin streams. But it wasn't fatal. It is unlikely that he will lose a lot of blood. You can't say that Uzumaki was unharmed either. He was covered in small scratches, but they were also insignificant to him. The main thing now is to find a way out. The boy did not know how much he had already run, but he had less strength and more fatigue. Deciding to take a chance, Jinchuriki folded the seal and shouted, the vacuum ball technique sent it to the ceiling, which immediately began to collapse. Naruto quickly made a dome out of earth, the only earth technique that he more or less succeeded in, thereby protecting them with Shin. After the collapse ended, the boy cancelled the technique and, scattering the stones that lay on the recently created earthen dome, hurried to jump out into the hole that had formed. Daylight made him squint and blink several times. They're free. It remains only to run to the canal. Fatigue with a vengeance rolled over the boy. Uzumaki fell to his knees, breathing heavily, and at the same time rejoicing that they were saved. And he could breathe in fresh air with the smell of grass. Now he will rest a little and continue on his way. Naruto lay down on the soft green grass, and, having caught his breath, he applied the henza on himself. After all, they were completely legs. Although, when your life with a friend is at stake, it makes absolutely no difference. It was more difficult with the tire. He was unconscious and couldn't apply the Hensa on himself, but Jinchuriki couldn't do it either. On someone other than yourself. There is only one genjutsu option left. He wasn't very good at it. Itachi refused to use it on him, referring to the fact that it can have a bad effect on the psyche of a student of the academy. Although, according to the former blue-eyed blonde, he just didn't want to do it because he was too soft with him. He was despised and beaten up by almost the whole village as a child. What, one wonders, should be the psyche of a child who has experienced and is still experiencing this? There's nothing left to break. So he got distracted. Genjutsu, genjutsu, genjutsu. And how to use it at all. Now Naruto felt really stupid. Like a genius, but no. Not knowing how to use genjutsu and at the same time be friends with 3 people from the Uchiha clan. Stupid. The attempt is not torture. In this case, he will only spend the last grains of his chakra, touching his friend's forehead with the middle and index fingers of his left hand, and folding the seal of chakra concentration in his right Uzumaki. He imagined Shin in the most ordinary clothes. Because there is no strength left to invent something exclusive. With the help of intuition alone, the guy changed the genjutsu, which was supposed to act on everyone who would see his tire. Opening his eyes, Jinchuriki was, to put it mildly, impressed with the result. He did it. And everything turned out the way he wanted. Fatigue quickly took the place of joy again. And again, lying down on the grass, the boy began to look at the clouds floating in the sky, resting and restoring the chakra. This is quite a long process, but it absolutely does not require intervention. The kid. The chakra will recover by itself. He was about to close his eyes and take a nap when he felt the lights of the chakra approaching here. And it was a powerful chakra, of course, not like Hokage or Arakimaru, but still. There were 7 chakra lights. Most likely, this is from the Anbu, among which Itachi and Shisuyut? They're heading this way. Perhaps the explosion attracted them. But why are they here? Did they have to go to another country? Although, they didn't say anything about another country at all. It's just that Uzumaki is used to it, that a long-term mission is equal to a mission in another country. Well, if these 2 were already running towards them, then he had nothing to fear. He turned his head to the left, and, after waiting a little, saw 2 people jumping down from the trees. Smiling out of the corner of Naruto's lips, warily closed his eyes and fell asleep. He finally felt at peace. Hair and skin slowly began to take on the same color. Fangs and nails have become ordinary, human, and not like an animal. And his eyes became blue again, like a clear sky. When the 2 Anbu ran up to the guys, they were both already asleep. Both Uchiha noticed that they were next to a huge hole in the ground, and also that something quite simple but skillful genjutsu was used on the tire.